Right, good evening and welcome to this month's Sawston Full Parish Council. I will now officially open the meeting by asking if there's any apologies, please.
Claire Delfield, Councillor Orgy, Councillor Matthews, Councillor Padilla.
Thank you. And next on the agenda is the public participation time, which we allow 15 minutes. So, over to the public. Are there any questions? Do I know you?
No, you don't know me. I think that lady wants to go before me.
Amanda.
Hello.
Hello and welcome.
Thank you so much. I would like to know what you're proposing to do about the parking of this new hub opposite next to you.
Which means what I'm proposing to do about the parking.
Well, where are you proposing these people to park when they?
Was that us as the parish council or the county council that are building it?
Well, I'm coming to ask you what.
But
because
regarding
when I
us
spoke to you
is-
before, Kevin,
Eh?
when I spoke to you before, you said that there was parking out the front of the youth centre, down the side of the youth centre and behind the houses beside the youth centre.
Yeah.
Did you not?
I said no, I didn't say behind. I said they were parking outside the front of the centre, of the youth centre, and there was facilities down to it behind the houses, not the
That's what I
side.
said,
No,
behind.
you said down the side.
And you said down the side of the youth
No,
centre.
I said behind.
Okay.
Right.
Well, anyway.
Go on.
Oh, sorry, I thought
No,
that
no,
was
go on.
going to say. Anyway, what are the proposals for the parking for this facility, please?
The proposals are, like I said, there's parking facilities at the front.
Well, that isn't enough.
And there's parking facilities, as I said, that we go on behind the houses. And that's the application's gone through, it's been processed, and that's where we are.
You also said that we've been given letters. I've been along New Road, I've asked 4 different families, none of them have received any notification about this.
Notifications were sent out.
Well, I
And there's
haven't
also
received
been
any.
very extensive coverage by the Sawston Sea.
Well, that's as maybe, but it's still, we haven't received anything.
Well, I know there
No,
was,
I haven't.
I know there was a load of stuff sent out.
There may have been, but we didn't receive it. I've asked 4 families and none of them have received it.
Okay, well,
I'm very concerned about this because when there's a function on at the youth centre, there isn't enough parking just for the youth centre. So I don't know, is this hub going to be open in the evening as well?
Can I jump in? So, the planning applications and letters to people who are affected by planning developments,
Yeah.
that's South Cambridgeshire District Council. The
Right.
people who are building the hub and made all the plans for it, which included all the provisions of parking and all the explanations and the details and the public consultations, that's Cambridgeshire County Council.
Right.
So the Parish Council commented on those plans a long time ago, because as you know, it's taken a very long time for them to get started on the build.
2013.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So really, I'm sorry to say this, but the time to give feedback on the provision for parking has passed.
But
And
we
feedback
know
would
about it.
have needed to have been given to the county council, not to the parish council, because they're the people who produce the
So
plans.
the parish council are not interested in parking along New Road at all?
We're not saying that. We didn't say that. What we said is we've given representation and we raised our concerns. But our concerns were not listened to and they came up with the solution that they came up with.
Which is the parking at the front and the back of the... So what about the parking that was proposed on this site that you said no to,
What side?
on Spicer's field?
What you want about the glass here?
Yeah.
That was we couldn't allow parking there because of the legal correspondence and the legal standing of the facilities. It's a sports facility, not a parking, not a car park.
But cars park there anyway.
Now they park it for sporting facilities. They do not park for the general public. It's not a general public car park.
This is not... Sorry.
Bon?
No, I just wondered whether you were thinking that we did have discussions about where the construction vehicles could park while it was under construction, but not. We didn't have that conversation, certainly in my time, about parking for the facility, other than the limited parking that we're talking about in front of the building itself and to the side. And it was clearly always going to not be enough car parking for the likely occupancy, and especially if you get an event on there with a lot of people. So,
because I was told that the problem arose because of the previous headmaster of the college, and he wouldn't allow more parking.
I think I think you may have been.
He objected to parking. He
He
objected to the parking facility that was being put forward, proposed.
But I think there's a different issue over contractor parking. So we had a discussion here over whether the college would allow contractors' vehicles to park within the grounds of the school, and Jonathan Culpin, who was the then principal, said he wouldn't allow that. That was certainly the case.
Okay, so is there anything we can do about parking along New Road? Is that anything to do with you, or is that another council?
So of on-street parking is a county council responsibility.
And do you have access to the county council? Can you put a case forward or not?
You see, the case, the application's now gone forward, and so there'll be
No, this is a separate one. This
You,
is a separate
as a
one.
member of public, you can certainly take that forward if you want to.
No, I'm asking you if you can take it forward.
No, as a member of public, you can take that forward. I can't participate in it because I've shown what my feelings and and so everything I say will be a conflict of interest. So it would have to come from the public because I supported the application.
I think that
No.
Amanda, is it Amanda?
Yes.
Yes. You were asking specifically about on-street parking
Yes.
on New Road, weren't
Yes.
you?
I was.
Not related to the
No.
hub.
That's what I said. If
Separate
we
from the
can't
hub.
do anything out of the hub, can we not do something about on-street or off-street parking on New Road?
There'll be a county council and a police matter.
Well, I probably need to involve the school as well, because it affects them so much.
It
So, you know,
does.
if you've got suggestions that you want to put forward,
I have.
I mean, it might be useful to discuss them with some parish councillors, but basically it's going to be a county decision.
Surely we could have something like resident parking only. I mean, opposite the youth centre is bad enough.
It's
When there's a function on there, there is traffic everywhere, and I mean everywhere. You can't get out of your drive, you can't get in your drive. If there was an accident, the police and the ambulance would not get through. And a lot of that is just bad management on people's, bad driving on the people that are going along because they just stop.
David, can I bring you in this?
Yes. Just a query, because at one stage in this internal process, there was a suggestion that the area which is currently occupied by the temporary library will become available for parking when that is removed. That was that
Was mooted.
It was mooted, yeah. Yes, that never happened.
the temporary library's still there, isn't it?
Well, yes, it will be moved when the hub opens.
Yeah.
The library goes into the
Just give us.
I've got a suggestion. So I believe, Joe, have we got an article, an item in the agenda to discuss parking?
Yeah.
So it might be worth you staying, because clearly we've got a problem in various locations, not only New Road, but Mill Lane and elsewhere in the village. And we've got an item where that whole issue is going to come up, so you may wish to stay and see what
Thank
we
you. But before you carry on, could I ask that a member of this parish council write on our behalf to the county council asking for either resident parking only or some other form of stopping people parking in front of our houses?
We will discuss
Believe me, it's
that,
not
we will
funny.
discuss that in the parking when we come to the parking issues on the agenda.
Sorry?
We will discuss that when we come to the parking issues on the
What,
agenda.
that somebody may be able to write a letter to the county council? Okay, I'll wait then.
So if I can just respond, I mean, the part of the difficulty that you've already heard is that different bodies are responsible for different aspects. So the painting of yellow lines, for example, and on-street parking, which that controls, is a county responsibility. The enforcement is a police responsibility. And for example, we know that the police have absolutely curtailed almost all enforcement. I mean, we went down from something like 200 enforcement actions in a year to a handful, a dozen. And it was just by happenstance when Chris Wiseman was here. And I've had personal experience just in the last couple of weeks as Chris Wiseman came out of the post office and people carried on getting out of their cars while parked on double yellow lines while he was stood there outside the post office.
I'm quite sure they do.
You know, brazenly.
Right, because we have got other members of the public, we have got only 15 minutes, and we will be discussing that further. Right, any other member?
I live up New Road, and I've not received any
Since
information about
2013. We'll go back to 2013.
Yeah,
You can
I've
clearly
lived
say that you've never received anything since 2013.
yes.
Yes,
And I don't know
okay.
anyone who
Okay.
has. I've lived up there 50 years, so
No. I think that I can consult the comms accounting and get that rectified.
none of my neighbours have
No,
said anything.
exactly.
They were surprised that when it started, they said,
Yeah.
oh,
And other people in the village have actually had clinics in Sawston scene, but not everybody takes Sawston scene.
But it was advertised, we had open meetings and open consultations that everybody was invited to. So,
and another,
I'm stunned that you're saying that you didn't receive it, yet
Yeah, I'm
there
stunned at
have
the
been
buildings.
open public consultations that everyone was invited to, and they were held in the walnut room, remember them?
Why were they not held in the new council offices that you have built?
Not
There's
really.
a
Meetings?
walnut room, which is a county council initiative.
Eh?
It was held in the walnut room at the college, and there was, what we call 4 meetings that I can at least recall,
There's been a lot.
all held in the college.
And what about this? Why is this one not held in the council offices?
Well, why don't we hold the, you asking us another question, because it's not big enough so we can have the general public here. And it's an ongoing argument, and if you want to go down that route, yes, it's a badly designed building, yes, it's a waste of money, but we are where we are. I was not the council at that time.
No, you won't. I was
Okay.
at that meeting as
Right, so we
well.
have it here to make it more convenient and better for the general public.
Sorry?
We have it here so it's easier for the general public to come along and ask the questions like you have asked tonight.
and also, if you want to discuss parking, you want to go down New Road when the buses are leaving here and the traffic's coming the other way and the buses are going up on the path to get by the vehicles. That's the time to look at the parking in New
We
Road.
are fully aware of all of the parking situations throughout the village.
I've been a member of Neighbourhood Watch, as you know, and we've brought this up continuously, and at one time they stopped the buses going back that way for about 2 months, and then they're back down that way again. And they continue
We
on
will
the
be
path.
discussing the parking issues and everything like that about the village. There are some issues that I'd like to bring forward that have been discussed, or ideas that have been discussed, nothing has actually been officially discussed. And so hang on till we get to that part of the agenda, and you'll see what you'll see what we're going to try and come up with. Okay?
Chair, can I make a suggestion? As Leslie isn't yet here, is she? Do we want to bring that forward? Is it possible to do that?
Can do if you can.
Yeah?
I just think as
Do we have a second for that?
Yeah.
Bring it forward? Right, all those in favour? Okay, that's fine. Right, so what the parking, which is on
164.
Thank you very much.
Is your thing?
Right, 164. Right, we did, let's,
Sorry, Ken, before we go on. Can I just, this gentleman here wanted to speak in the public time. Are we going to, was yours parking?
That's nothing to do with parking.
No, what I'm saying here is obviously, we move on to the office.
It's
Just making
more
sure.
important, mine, Kevin, because I only want to complain about you lot. For a start. Last meeting you held here, you turned around and said there's too many people on the parish council, over 50, out of order. Right. Another one is you said you back the villages. You don't back the villagers at all. I've been at 2 meetings when I was on the parish council when people were there arguing about planning and the parish council backed the planning. They refused to back the people what were putting in their arguments.
If we go against the village, as you so put it, we have to consider material reasons and that application on its own merit. And you know that being an ex-councillor. So when it comes to planning applications, if there's nothing that we can object to, then we can't object.
That's not the parish, you said you back the parish,
We
but
do
you
back
back
the
that
parish,
planning, you
100%.
don't have to back planning, people,
I'm
you always turn around and say
every
you don't have
member
to.
of this parish council backs the parish council.
You don't
Back to
back.
back.
I'm sorry, but you don't. There's only about 3 or 4 people on this parish council what are actually for the village. The rest of you are just a waste of space, all right?
Anything else to say, Rog?
Yeah. There's one more thing.
Go on.
I was told the other day the doctors was going to open at nights and weekends. But today I've been told they're not going to open now. They were going to extend their hours.
Prescription.
Let's look at the description.
They were going to extend their hours of
Well,
opening.
we haven't been informed of that.
But I suppose you've been on Facebook.
You're going to be able to get your prescriptions from the
From the
post
post
office.
office.
There is something about it here. Extended GP opening hours in the evenings and weekends. For further information, go to openlater.co.uk. But I haven't. That was what was posted. I don't know.
The parish council certainly haven't been opposed, have we?
Evening and weekend appointments to see a GP, nurse or healthcare are now available to all patients in Cambridge, Ely, Royston and surrounding villages at a number of hubs. Nuffield Road Medical Centre, Competent Surgery, St Mary's Surgery and Royston Health Centre.
Yeah. So it takes 5 weeks to get an appointment down here now. And there's one person went down there on a scooter and they turned around and told him, if you want an appointment, go to Barney or Royston. He said, how do I get that? They said, there's a taxi. Now that is not on neither from the...
Yeah, that's not, hold on Roger, that's not a parish council issue. That's
No, but surely the parish council should be looking into things like that.
We can't look into it if we're not informed. And
Well, it's
if
just
you've
been
only gone on the
informed.
internet and saying that, we've got to be formally informed before we can open any form of discussion. You know that, Roger, so
I
what
know
are you playing the
that.
game for?
But you won't take notice anyway. I could bring
No,
up a
you've
lot
got
about
the
planning,
day.
but I'm going to give it up now.
Yeah, we're
Get
not-
on, you're late. I don't
No,
want to keep
We've
you too late.
finished public part,
No,
so
no,
we'll
no.
now and move on.
I didn't want you to listen.
Keep trying, Roger, you can keep trying. Right, coming back to the agenda, item 164, to discuss parking in the village.
Please take declarations first. One by one.
Right, declarations of interest, please. Right,
Yeah, I guess when we come to talk about the Stanley Webb Close section 106, that's related to the adjoining H1B.
right,
planning. I mean,
Yes, I don't think this aspect of it.
no, but
Those are
I just think it's
interesting.
anything to do with H1B, my trustee, directorship of JC.
any other declaration of interest?
That's the one.
No? Right, 164, discuss parking in the village. As there has been the heat raised tonight, and there's also been an ongoing issue regarding the village, and since the co-op has put the 3-hour limit on parking, it has made problems even worse. The reason I put this on, it was discussed at a meeting that unfortunately I didn't attend, and the discussion revolved around potential ideas of getting our own PCSO to enforce parking and things like that. The fact that the parking isn't enforced by the police in any way, and so the reason I wanted this to be put back on the agenda was, as a parish council, if we could come up with ideas ourselves to alleviate the parking situation. Now, there are certain areas in the village that we could approach and ask if we could use them as parking spaces. There's places like round the back of Common Lane. No, not Flinders. Down Common Lane, there's areas. There's potential areas like at the southern end of the village where Big Wells is, where they've got the trees and everything. But perhaps we could look at something like that, widening the road or making the high street. One thing to do is make the high street possibly a one-way system, which will help to reduce the traffic and the issues down there. But there is an ongoing problem with the villages, parking generally in the village, i.e. down Mill Lane, there's blind seats frequently, there's big issues down there, there's big issues on New Road, there's issues regarding Link Road when we have a school, there's issues we've got at Linton Way with the Ingle School there. So generally speaking, the village is getting bigger and the problem is not going away. So what I would like to do is spend 5 to 10 minutes with the Parish Council to come up with ideas that we could look at to try and ease this parking situation. Beck?
I've had some correspondence with a Mill Lane resident who's seeing very clearly the problems caused by a sudden load of parking down there now that the co-op are on a 3-hour limit. He's also saying that he's seeing that the co-op car park is mostly empty now that everybody's parking down Mill Lane. His suggestion was that perhaps there could be a row of spaces in the car park that are long-term parking, and that they could keep some of it for that and some of it for other
Potential idea, so that's one idea, long-term parking in the co-op. Anybody else have ideas? John?
Well, Link Road, that's become worse in the morning since they got the extra classroom. They're now parking within the zigzags up to the crossing in the morning and all day. They still only have one entrance. Can we not encourage them to have a second gate at the back of the property, at the back of their grounds, because there's only one entrance to the whole school? They could then use the theatre for the car park, for drop-off, and going in the back end.
One of the things I was going to approach the co-op and Bilbert School is to potentially use some of the car park there as a drop-off for children, because there is a back entrance into it. There used to be a gate.
They were going to put a gate in and they redid it, they put a new fence up and there's no back gate.
We can ask them to have a look at that. But we can, by using, that would help to relieve, but the thing is that will only relieve one area. What we're looking at is the general picture of the whole village. But,
So just to respond to that, I mean, it seems to me that actually there are many smaller measures that we could take that would build up to relieve the bigger problem. I think that would be one of them. One of the issues that was mentioned previously was that without enforcement,
I don't want to go with areas. If we have specific parking areas, you don't need to worry about enforcement. So let's look at how we, as a council, can address that issue. So that's what I'm looking to do.
But if there is no enforcement, people will park where they want. That's what they're doing today. They're parking on double yellow lines. The post office leave their vans parked on double yellow lines, as long as the time they're not using them. So 18 hours a day or whatever, they're not using them.
But
Hold on.
I think.
Sorry, can I finish?
Oh, yes. Yeah, go on then. Go ahead. But I want to remind that specific.
All right, I've waited for my point to say something.
Yeah, but hold on, just hold on back. Come on.
Thank you. So, without parking enforcement, right, we will continue with people parking willy-nilly where they will without any consideration for the impact of their parking. Although we can take some of these incremental routes that we've just been talking about, it's got to be a bigger solution to the whole of the village. I mean, this is replicated across the district, where we've got a district of 100 plus villages that have never had parking control. So unlike other urban or semi-urban areas where they've got on-street parking, they've got charged off-street parking and so on, we've never had to have that in South Cowes. the question remains, do we do something on a larger scale? Because we have no authority in this right as a parish council, so all we can do is by persuasion. Now, we can do smaller things by persuasion. We could, for example, have asked the dwellers in the wall pack if we could have used some of their parking as a temporary, but whatever they weren't using it, there was wasted space behind their property. So there are a whole series of small measures that we could do there, but ultimately my concern is that without any parking enforcement, people will carry on parking where they like when they like.
But coming back to the point that was made earlier as well, is regarding the point that man made was pointing to the county. All we can do with the county is ask them to put double yellow lines on. The issue that we have with that, as Brian's rightfully pointed out, if it's not enforced, there's no enforcement on it, then where do you go? And that's the issue. So to do it, we need cooperation with A, the county, and B, the police, that they are actually enforcing it. And so that's where the problem that we got is it's not as simple as just saying, can we stop people from parking? It's got to be, as Brian rightly said, has to be enforced as well.
But that's not what
But I can't, but this is what I'm displaying, we can't have that discussion now, because we're in close.
But you told
The
me
point, sorry, you can't join the discussion once we're into the meeting. The point I wanted to make is that we keep going round and round the houses about enforcement and the lack of enforcement.
Yeah.
And what we were starting to do before we got round to that discussion again was try and think of some more creative solutions.
Absolutely.
Because until we have solutions and things that actually work for people, of course people are going to go on breaking the law because it's a ludicrous situation. You know, people are trying to drop their kids off at school and then get to an office by a specific time. They don't have time to walk their kids to school. It sometimes looks as though the county council is 15 years out of date in its ideas of how families work. So let's try and use this time to think of some more creative solutions and things that we think might be easy to fix, like talking to the bellbird about whether they could have a back gate, and then we could use the space at the co-op. There's no point going around the enforcement loop because we've been around that a million times and never got anywhere with it.
I think Jane was before me.
Jane?
Yeah, we recently, though, at one of the meetings, Mr Russell came along with plans for how they're going to change the school.
Yeah.
That also included, though, off-site parking on the fields in their redevelopment, so all the buses will actually go completely on the side, so they won't be out on the road, and there will be more parking on site for people to drop off and pick up people, so it isn't on the road. So the school are actually thinking ahead in how they can deal with it.
They are working with it. Kevin?
A few things. I think you're right. We can't do this on our own, but you know, we've got to help to try and get this consortium together to all the parties involved. And I think there are three aspects which have to go together. There's the enforcement, as we've discussed. There's finding additional locations because you know the village there were however many spaces, 60 or so, that people used to use in the co-op. The co-op who own the car park and you know. Within their rights, who lease the car parks, are within their rights to do the enforcement. So, you know.
And if I may, just point of information, I mean, they are obliged. I mean, of course, the perversity is that when budgets were leased, they didn't enforce the requirement for a 3-hour limit. It was there in the lease.
Oh, okay.
So it's only
since
the co-op have seen it and said, oh, we'll try and control it. Now, sorry, can I just on that particular issue, Beck mentioned one of the residents and some of his suggestions, and we don't charge, the district council doesn't charge for the lease of the car park, but it's clearly a component of the whole business case that it comes with the property. So whether that shifts the balance of what we can do or ask the co-op to do, for example, do we need them to enforce the 3-hour limit?
It's presumably costing. But sorry, because I was going on to say the third bit is reducing car use. And we need to look at those three together, because just saying there's nothing we can do about cars, we've got to find space, you know, let's concrete over playing fields or, you know, whatever, in order to, we can't, you know, we need to consider all of those three. I don't have any brilliant answers for how we do that, whether it's, but we should be thinking even more wider. You know, do we need a big car park on the outskirts of the village with transport links, or you know, something like that?
Shuttle bus.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say it.
And now, Karen, I'll say it.
No, that's it.
Stephen?
Were you not?
I think.
Okay, I think it's entirely sensible that we consider what we should look to do as a parish council in terms of finding solutions. So it would surely be sensible to actually, if we're talking about communicating, whilst we as parish councillors obviously live in the village or very much know the village, that we can find information and such like, but there may well be many other creative solutions. And I think it would be an opportunity for the parish council to connect with the village, to say to people, what other solutions would you offer, what would you suggest? Because often these things come from people just who, you know, there may be somebody who walks a certain route every day at a certain time and is the only person who does that and therefore sees things. So therefore I think we should be looking to use whatever communication we can, the roles of people in the village and finding out what we can. However, I would be loath for us to absorb responsibility for solving a problem that is not our responsibility. The responsibility for this problem is absolutely crystal clear with other bodies. It is the choice of the Police and Crime Commissioner to direct the police not to enforce traffic regulations. That is not an accident. Now, we have tried, as you rightly point out, and we shouldn't go around the houses again and again and again regarding PCSOs and everything else, but in a sense, the people of this village and us as parish council have been failed by one of the bodies in Cambridgeshire who have chosen to allow this situation to arise. They didn't have to. The Police and Crime Commissioner for Cambridgeshire did not have to allow this to arise. He made a decision to prioritise the resources of the police force away from enforcing traffic regulations. Now, I don't want his job, quite frankly, because I feel it's a nightmare, because he's got an almost impossible job managing the resource he has. But still, it's his responsibility. So I agree with exactly what you are proposing, Kevin, that we should look for alternative suggestions. The things you suggested about parking, the things you talked about, you know, out of the village, shuttle bus and whatever. But at the same time, what I would actually be loath for us to do as a parish council is basically let other people off the hook who have created this problem. So therefore, whatever we agree, I suggest also has to go with either some form of formal complaint regarding the fact that the Police and Crime Commissioner has chosen to create this problem which has undermined the well-being of the people in the village, or whatever other route connecting with other parish councils to say this is a problem we all now have and we are being failed by a combination of the Police and Crime Commissioner in Cambridgeshire and Constabulary who are not enforcing the law. So I absolutely support your suggestion and we should look at the alternatives, but I do not want us to go down a route which takes other people off the hook.
Thank you. Tony?
Yeah, I was actually, Kieran just touched on what I was going to suggest as well. But it's a mini park and ride. There's plenty of land on the bike or off the bypass, farmland there that could become available. And no one's ventured into that field yet. But within perhaps 10 years that might well come of use. But
Okay.
I think that's a way forward.
It's fine. But
I was just going to suggest, as I just suggested to you, that as we're fairly short of time tonight, I think a really good forum to discuss this and also get some more offbeat ideas from people who are interested in alternative transport solutions will be to take this to the neighbourhood plan, because I think it's exactly the kind of thing that can be part of our neighbourhood plan. I'm very keen on discussing more radical ideas as well. I discussed with residents at one time whether we could make the village one way, because that would also let us increase the width of the pavement. There are bits of the high street where the pavement is absolutely tiny.
like cycleways.
Make cycleways, pedestrianise the central bit. But I think the neighbourhood plan would be a good place to discuss that.
Okay, right. We have discussed this now. We've got some ideas. I totally agree with Beck that we could do it through the neighbourhood plan, but also, if that doesn't prove, there was ways of that, because we've got to start communicating, we get communication with the village, but another idea is to actually have a open public meeting to discuss parking issues and potentially cycling issues as well, and transport generally in the village. So we'll go back with this, we'll come up with some ideas, we'll go to the neighbourhood plan, and then we'll come back to the public and see how they want to pursue with this as well.
And I think if we do have a public meeting, we get representatives of those bodies, exactly as Stephen mentioned, and all of the others.
Yeah.
You know, not just councillors, but just councillors.
We'll get the police, we'll get the council, we'll get everybody, bus company. Right?
A simple solution to help New
We
Road.
this is council discussion. Right, that said, moving on to 152, to discuss the mobile warden scheme and timetabling scheme. And I welcome Leslie McFarlane, hello there, and Emma Fordham as well. So, Leslie Riley, if you can't, because you've got some ideas regarding the mobile warden.
Okay, so firstly, apologies for arriving late.
That's fine.
Yes, so I'm Leslie McFarlane. I work for South Cambs District Council in the Sustainable Communities team. I wanted to come and talk to you this evening about setting up a mobile warden scheme in Sawston. Does everyone know what a mobile warden scheme is?
I do, but others might not.
Okay, so far across the district we have about 14 schemes that cover about 31 parishes. Most of the schemes are homegrown or community-led schemes, and that has led to a kind of uneven distribution of schemes across parishes. We really value the schemes, and the schemes that are in place are also very valued by the community and the people that are serviced by them. So a mobile warden scheme is it's a service for vulnerable people in your community. It tends to be mostly accessed by the over 65s, and it provides a telephone service and a visiting service for people that sign up to it. So the service costs about £1 a day for those that join. Parish councils traditionally there's two ways of running them. So you can run them by setting up a board of trustees, or you can bring an outside provider in, for instance, Age UK. So they're funded in various sources or in various ways. But what happens is, I guess, the real benefit of these services are that it enables people to live longer independently in their own homes. It delays the entrance into costly care and social care. It prevents and delays transfers into hospital, and it also enables people that have been in hospital to be discharged much sooner, because if there's a mobile warden scheme service, they're there to make sure that the heating is on, that there's food in the fridge, that there's milk, and that perhaps the source of hazard that led to the trip that forced this person to hospital is also removed. It also provides a really vital link to the grant and medical service. So I don't know whether you're all aware, but that's really developing in terms of an integrated neighbourhood. So they really want to use and make best use of all the other services that can support their patients. So a mobile warden would link into that service and be that vital link between patient and GP practice. They also signpost to other services. So if they get a new client, the first thing they might do is sit down with them and see what benefits are available to them. If it was disability allowance or a housing benefit, often these people don't know what's available to them unless someone is there to guide them. So there's all sorts of benefits for the service. The reason why we're so keen on setting one up in Sawston is that you have a population, according to the latest 2017 census figures, of 7,220 in Sawston. currently you have 23% of your population aged over 65. Now what we know is over the next 20 years, that population is going to increase by 50%. The over 90s is set to increase by 137%, and the rate of dementia is set to increase by 94%. So the increase on the social and healthcare system, which is already stretched to the limit, will continue to be burdened. So this is what can we do as a community to help support our over 65s or those people who are living in isolation on their own to live independently and well and cared for in your community. So,
Right, I have a few questions.
go on.
Number one, we have time bank in the village. How can you work with time bank? Number two, we have what we call the Huntington's Trust. We have the officer service where they help people that have difficulties. There's that. And number three, the most critical point is the funding of it. Where does the funding come from? And what responsibility, funding-wise, will the parish council have?
So first of all, the volunteering. So every scheme that's set up, so if it was a community-led scheme, you would employ you'd set up a board of trustees and you'd employ a warden, maybe 20 hours a week, and that person might look after 15 clients. But these people tend to need to be looked after 7 days a week, or they get a telephone call at least 7 days a week. And so other schemes use their volunteers to provide that support at the weekends or over holiday cover and absenteeism cover. So I've spoken to Great Shelford that have a scheme there, which is community-led, and they use volunteers for that scheme. What they told me is that those volunteers shadow them, so they get some basic training, and they're also DBS checked and they have reference checking. One of the conversations that we had was, well, actually, who pays for that DBS check? So at the moment, the scheme pays for the DBS check. So so the volunteers don't have to do that. But you would need, I guess, a dedicated volunteers that have that desire to care. And I guess you have a small pool of those to work with. In terms of working with the John Huntington charity, again, if it's housing related need or benefits related need, they have a wealth of information there. So it would be useful to put those people in touch with, I guess it depends on their needs and what their needs are. And if they can be linked with that charity, then of course those connections would be made. In terms of funding, question number 3, as a district council, we are very, very keen to set up a scheme in Sawston. And we have just agreed to fund any new schemes for the first 2 years on the proviso that following that first 2 years, the parish would then take over, because we think it's really important that it's a community-led scheme. So it kind of gives 2 years as a kind of settling in and bedding in period. Other parishes, and the thing is, no 2 schemes are the same. So I'd love to be able to tell you this is how much they get and this is where they get their funding from, but it differs completely. But what I can tell you is that the schemes that we've got at the moment, the average contribution from the parish council is about £1,500 a year.
That's ongoing.
Sorry?
That's ongoing.
Ongoing, yeah. They then seek grant funding from Cambridgeshire County Council, from the Cambridgeshire Community Foundation. Shelford get money from they raise money through their Feast Week, others go through the Rotary Club. It tends to come, and then of course you've got your client fees. So it comes from numerous sources of funding.
Right, so we're after the first 2 years of which the district council are funding it.
Yeah.
You're asking the parish council to take it on after that 2 years.
Yeah.
Is that the £1,500 per annum, or is that going to be a lot more than that?
No, because that's that £1,500.
So how much is how much the district council how much of the district council paying towards that first 2 years?
Fully funding it.
Yeah, how much is that costing?
Well, that depends. So if you went down...
So you haven't answered the question. I need
Yeah,
to
I
know
don't-
what those figures are.
Because those figures differ, because it depends on how many clients you have. So it depends on how big your scheme is. So we would imagine a ballpark figure would be about £18,000 to £20,000. But a lot of that will come from your service client, your users. So it depends on how much you charge them. So each scheme charges slightly different. So the more you charge your clients, the more sustainable the scheme will be.
But then you've got the administration and charging them and dealing with all that as well. So is that costed in to what
Yes,
you're
so
saying the
what-
running costs of it?
That is run by the Board of Trustees, so they would administer that.
So it's basically, is it a registered charity that
Yes,
needs to be
yeah.
set up?
Or you employ Age UK and they do it for you.
I was just going to mention Age UK as,
Yeah.
as an alternative. So there's really two models, aren't there, of organising this. I think in Melbourne,
Yeah.
they've got quite a large scheme there. That's got the trustees running it. Actually, I think their cost per person are relatively low as well. About £5 or £6 a week. That matches your pound a day sort of general, but there is some variability, isn't there? And also the funding from the district council at the moment is slightly oddly based on the amount of reserves the parish council has. So, but that's under review as well.
Right, because the reason I'm asking you all these poignant questions is because we just recently, as I said, taken on the time bank.
Yeah.
We ended up taking on, and we, as a parish council, we ended up employing the time banker, which wasn't what the agreement was. We had an agreement that we would pay £6,000 a year for 2 years, and the whole thing's turned around, now we're employing it, so it's costing us a lot more than that. And my concern with all of this, number one, we've got the time bank going on, which is going to cost us £12,000 over a 2-year period, and we've got to find the funding for that after that 2-year period as well. And then we've got this on top, and you're talking about a potential of 18 to 20,000. And because Sawston is quite a sizable village, you just said 7,200, 23% of the population is over 65. That's some strain. That's quite some considerable strain. So my concern with this, until I get what I call figures that we could work with, I'm struggling to see how we can move forward with this, because I don't want to be in a position where the parish council agrees to this, and then turns around, but then we find that we've got a £20,000 bill on our hands, which that would in fact add a PSAC, that would in fact affect people's council tax and everything else. And so that's why I'm asking those questions, and that's where I want the clarity before. My personal opinion is, there's other members here that will give you their opinion, but that's where I stand with this at the current time.
My concern as well is that you're citing as a reason for doing this the fact that social services and health services have been cut to the bone. That's really not something where parish councils can take up the slack. That's because of gross underfunding over the last decade of those services by a government whose stated policy it was to reduce public services and who got into power on that basis. I think, there's a lot of very well qualified and very underpaid people who would have been doing this kind of work in the past. I think all of us here feel that it's getting onto very shaky ground for parish councils to be trying to organise things like this. Apart from the clerk, who already has a lot to do, and the assistant clerk and the groundsman, we're all volunteers. We don't necessarily know anything about this kind of thing. And like Kevin, the sort of sums of money you're talking about sound very alarming. And I think we're absolutely thrilled with what Emma's done with the time bank, and that's all sounding brilliant. But the way in which that project was described to us by South Hams District Council was extremely misleading. So I think we're very worried about getting our fingers burnt again.
I could put it better. Kevin?
Yeah, so I think, if my understanding from what you've said is right, it's not, nobody's expecting the parish council to own or run this scheme. It would be an independent trust. there would be, and part of the 2 years would be building the funding base for the years after, of which the parish councils are generally in other schemes contribute to it. But nobody's saying, you know, that if this wasn't funded, the parish council would have a liability for the entire cost of the scheme. That's my understanding.
Well, that's not the understanding I'm picking up.
No, it's sounding more as though we take it on and then we stop with it.
That's the way I'm saying it. Anybody else got any comments? Emma, go on.
So basically, after Leslie and I met, we sort of went through ideas of what the Time Bank members could do as part of this, which they could definitely help with the volunteer sort of cover, so the weekend cover, to link in. But there's no way we could ask Time Bank members to basically do what mobile wardens do, because Time Bank is supposed to be informal, it's supposed to be flexible, volunteers choosing, you know, what they want to do with their time. And yes, it is about helping people in the community, and we do have lots of volunteers in the Time Bank that will happily do elements of the mobile warden scheme, but there's no way that, I think at the moment, that we've got people that would basically do the mobile warden scheme. So although we have got the Time Bank and we have got the people, we are not the mobile warden scheme. That's not to say that we wouldn't absolutely massively support it, because we would, and I know that lots of Time Bank members would be eager to be involved, but wouldn't actually want to commit, you know, to every, you know, week taking on multiple things kind of thing. And also our volunteers are just, you know, general everyday people. They're not necessarily professionals in any of these elements, so they won't have the same sort of level perhaps of training or support that the mobile warden would have as well. And obviously I can support them, but they are still volunteers, and we have to think about that. The other thing obviously is to be aware of, what we talked about before, is DBSs and paying for that, and as part of the scheme that would pay for DBSs. So that would be one way that obviously we could DBS a lot of our Time Bank members that were going to be involved with this, without that coming out of any other pot that we don't necessarily have. Was sort of another point I wanted to raise as well. Just trying to think, they were sort of the main things from that discussion. Obviously, if you've got questions about that as well.
Stephen?
I feel I missed something. Where did your 25,000 figure come from?
We're going to say 25,000, 18 to 20,000.
Right. What?
That's what
Sorry, I felt I missed something completely. What was that?
There was an abrupt leap from £1,500 a year to 18 to 20,000 a year, which
Okay.
I also was slightly...
In that case then, since I didn't hear that and understand that, could you explain where that's come from again?
Yeah,
I felt I missed something.
Yeah, well,
All right, so the thing is, what I can't do is, every scheme is different, and they all administer their scheme differently, so you can't compare apples with apples.
No, I accept that completely. It's just that a statement was made that there was potential that we would end up picking up a liability in the, let's call it the 20,000 region.
Well, the parish wouldn't pick up the liability, because it would either be the Board of Trustees, or it's going to be run by Age UK. There will be a contribution from the parish council of about £1,500, but again that differs between, it depends on how many clients you have, as Brian said, what your reserves are, other sources of funding, but it works out on average to be about £1,500 for parish councils. These schemes have been running for about 20 years, so they are sustainable in how they're set up. I haven't had any parish, there haven't been any that have folded, and there hasn't been a situation where a parish council has had to pay £18,000 to keep their scheme running, because the other sources of funding have come through.
Sorry, I still feel I'm like a thick human being at times. Where is this 18 to 20k figure coming from then? No, seriously,
I think I understand.
Okay.
Most of the schemes that you're talking about have an annual running cost of 20k.
Okay.
Or thereabouts.
Okay.
So that's what South Cams fund completely for 2 years. After that point, the independent trust has to raise 20k in order to make it happen. That 20k can be funded from a variety of different sources, of which contributions from the parish council is one.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
I'm sure you explained it perfectly well, and I was being very honest, and I felt everyone else was looking at me like, oh God.
No, that's fine. But,
And I had, sorry, I had a second one, if that's okay.
go on.
Oh, go on.
Yeah, sorry. Could you explain a bit more about this possibility of using Age UK? What do they do? How does that work in terms of funding cost? Would that still apply in terms of what Kieran just explained about kind of the annual costs and such like?
So Age UK basically work with you. What they would ask is they'd work with the GP practice to get referrals, but they employ the warden and they administer the service. So all they would be seeking from you as a parish council is the contribution.
Of 1,500.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Depending
okay.
on the size of your scheme.
And they would, and if
It's not going
Age...
to be. There's no. If I look through.
It's not a fixed fee.
No.
Yeah.
It's definitely proportional. So part of, if I may, so part of the rationale behind offering this as a two-year fully funded service is to get the thing established without any additional cost to the parishes, and then reverting to the model that other parishes use currently, which is making a contribution. But that contribution could be £2,500 or it could be 800 quid. It depends on how many people are in the scheme. And bear in mind, of course, that they are also contributing to the cost of that scheme. I mean, it's not a great deal, but it's a significant proportion. And one of the things I was going to suggest, because if we think that the situation with the time bank left us unclear over our position in this, why don't we have somebody come talk to us who is running an Age UK based scheme, because that's very much hands off from the parish council. Basically, there's a fee costing worked out per person on the scheme, and then all the management is done by Age UK itself. And they get contributions, as Leslie has mentioned, from the county council. They'll get contributions from the district council, and then also a proportion from the parish council. And it's very much as you described it, hands off. The other alternative model is the trustee model, where you get a series of volunteers managing the scheme, typically volunteers, of course. I don't think there are any people who are doing paid trustee work. And the Melbourne and Melbourne model is one such, so we could get somebody from there to tell us about that. And you can see, I think they've got how many wardens have they got? They've got a lot.
About 3 wardens and about 47 clients.
So that's quite a significant scheme, been running a long time, and I think that would put us in a position to ask them practical questions about how those schemes work, so that we could decide whether we were comfortable with it.
Yeah. I wanted to say.
Sorry, I just had a quick question, Amanda. Is the scheme that South Council, the pilot scheme, is that contingent on the parish council being the main driver, or can you work with other organisations?
We want the parish council to be the main driver because we want it to be community-led.
But community-based charities, for instance?
Yeah, for instance, if John Huntingdon charity wanted to set it up, fantastic.
That was my question.
So I think we don't have to propose. Sorry.
Hold on,
Brian made an informal proposal. I want to make that a formal proposal. In a way that I think what we want to follow up is finding a way that it doesn't have to be basically the parish council's responsibility. We want to work with an organisation that basically knew what it was doing. So to work with JHC or get somebody in to talk to us who's running it through Age UK, that sounds like the way forward.
Before I take that to the vote, there's a point. Before we close on that, is the issue that the concern that I have about that is, and everyone in this council is fully aware of it, is the cutbacks that the county are putting in place. So you're saying that the county is going to get finances to that. We don't know what the county's budget's going to be next year. Though currently they're in those discussions starting now. So, bottom line here, put to the point, if the county say actually no, then what happens?
Well, lots of schemes don't even apply to the county council funding.
Okay. So I'm just looking to make sure there's avenues that we can pursue.
Absolutely.
I'm more than happy to accept the proposal from Ryan and seconded by Bex that we do meet up with an independent Age UK.
So what I'm just review that. What I'm suggesting is that we have somebody, as Leslie's done, come here to the meeting.
Yes,
and get somebody that's running an Age UK scheme, get somebody who's running a trustee scheme, so that we can compare the two side by side, get their experience of doing so, and then we can make a more informed decision.
Does that need to be done at full council?
Or could we do a supplementary, could we invite them, you can do it?
I would rather do it in front of the full council, because then everyone's got a full. Okay. Right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Stephen?
Not to in any way disagree or want to change what you said, I just kind of want to repeat a point I made a month ago, 2 months ago, about the fact that I just think it's important for us to remember that based on the figures that have been given there and also the general kind of thing, to remember that obviously it is sometimes easier for us to make decisions to support things that young people benefit from, and by definition, schemes that older people in our community can benefit from can often be more complicated. So therefore, I absolutely think that it's vital that we give time and energy and consideration to this, because we are talking here about at least a quarter of the residents in the village who perhaps don't benefit as much in an obvious way from what we do. Perhaps other people do. And I just feel it's important that we make that very clear to the community as well, that is part of the reason why we are pushing this as a parish council. We are recognising our responsibility to
we also do
everyone
a
in the
lot of
village.
time making for those reasons.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Add that to it as well, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Alright. Alright, on to 153, confirm as the minutes of the Parish Council on the 8th of October.
I would point out that there were typos on the meeting size and some towards the bottom.
Which one on there? What, 120?
We should do that when we get to the item.
What's that, 120? 121, 122, 123, 124, 125, 126, 127, 128, 129, 130, 131, 132. We've got a full house. 133, 134. How many agendas are there?
No, it's done.
Okay. 135, 136, 137, 138, 139, 140, 141, 142, 143, 144, 145, 146, 147 and 148. Can I have a proposal? Thanks James, second Kieran, thank you. All those in favour? Unanimous. Right, recreation and open spaces. Is it done?
Yes.
Oh, right, planning environment, yeah. Right, all good copies? Right, no, number one?
Yeah, sorry, we did note in the full parish that we agreed to call it chair rather than chairman.
Yeah. Absolutely, right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 and 13. Can I have a proposer? Neil, thank you. Seconder, Alan, thank you. All those in favour?
I haven't listened, so I won't vote.
Right, recreation and open spaces. Here we go. Right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 is a recommendation.
Yep.
Right, 5 was the sports club matters. The recommendation is proposed by Beth Laxton and seconded by Councillor Kevin Guthrie to recommend to Ford to pay £1,000 towards levying of the cricket square in 2020 and to accommodate the money in the budget. That is to give the full picture a 50%, but basically going to pay 50% towards the cost. So, just asking them to take a vote on that. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you very much. Number 6. Proposed by Councillor Beck Laxton and seconded by David Barr to recommend to Ford we support the request and purchase the trees using the money for in the budget. That's to do with groundsman's issues, and that's the trees along the... Yeah. Again, all those in favour? Unanimous. 7, 8, another 7, 8.
This is the one that we've had a letter from one of the other football clubs shared by email, but it's not that relates to, isn't it, Joe? It is.
It was proposed by Councillor Becklash and seconded by David Barr to recommend to Ford that we offer Linton Way to a Saturday afternoon at a cost of £55 per game. I actually abstained at this at the meeting. I'm not convinced personally with this. I think that we could potentially open in issues. There is a letter that came from Sawston United that they have no general objections, but they were saying that there's potentially where they're going to get the players from and have they taken into consideration all the admin costs that are involved in this. It's not just about £55 a game, referees, expensive kits, and fines, registrations, and everything else that comes with it. So, I do not support this in any way.
But I think none of that is our problem. It's like when...
Exactly,
and that's exactly...
They're not paying legal, which is that first year, they're just paying for this from what you said.
And that's what we're here for.
It's exactly what Sawston United said. They don't think they'll find the people for it, but you know, if they think they want to try then go ahead. You know, it's exactly the same with planning applications. You know, if somebody wants to have 2 sweet shops in the village, then we don't say, no, that doesn't seem like a very sensible idea. You know, we don't have a planning objection for it. So I think, you know, that doesn't seem up to us to say, no, we don't think it'll work. You know, let them have a go, because they were very enthusiastic.
I disagree, it would be hairdressers.
Can I ask, on what basis do we charge clubs? Do we charge them in advance? Do we charge them in arrears? Right.
Yeah, but
So financially exposed.
So even better, yeah.
Okay, so Sidney.
So I don't agree with your position, Kenna, but I think that this isn't a planning issue, and I think you're entirely entitled to vote against it. I don't agree with you, but I actually think that from the perspective of the parish council being the custodians of the ground, that if the position that Kevin takes is that he thinks that potentially it might not help the overall situation in the village, I think actually it's an entirely valid position to stand. You don't need me to tell you, but I just feel I want to defend your position, sir. Even though I totally disagree with you.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Well, yes.
I understand that the groundsman still has no issues with this.
They can't, there's no room for them to
no
train.
room to train.
It's just like, it's just the
Yes.
matches.
Okay, let's go, right, we had a discussion,
Right, vote.
let's go to the vote. All those in favour?
Yeah.
One
To
against.
see how it works. Yeah.
Let's hope it can do this continue to work.
Number 9, a agreed quote for the fire assessment. It's proposed by Councillor Kevin Company, seconded by Councillor Beck Laxton, to recommend to full to accept the quote of £1,129 per year for 3 years regarding the fire risk assessments. All those in favour? Unanimous. The 10, to agree the fire maintenance on all pavilions and office on a 3-year contract. It was proposed by Councillor David Bard and seconded by Councillor Beck Laxton to recommend to full. We accept the quote of £596.65p plus VAT for is that for 3 years? Is
That's per year, but
per
three
year for 3
contract.
years. Again, all those in favour?
Thank you.
Discuss 11. 12, 13.
Sorry,
No,
no,
but it's not-
Yeah, I can't say that.
Recommendation.
no, it's the machine servicing quotes.
Yeah.
I've got my paper coming up.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Thank you. Right, I propose to Councillor Kevin and seconded by Councillor Bard to recommend to full council to replace the sign. No, that's not the one. That one.
Yeah, so.
To Backbacks and Councillor Edward to recommend to full council accept the quote of £1,373.92p for the surfacing of the machines. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah,
For the big ones.
for the big ones.
Sorry, no, I'm voting.
Alright, all those in favour?
Sorry.
Go ahead,
To
Steve.
do it. Yeah.
Right. 12. Discuss installing a replacement sign at Ultra Park regarding play area and contact details. It was proposed by Councillor Kevin and seconded by David Bard to recommend to full that we replace the sign at a cost of £60. If that's to say that we don't, the sign is to clarify that we
don't own.
We don't own it, but we
We
maintain
maintain
it.
it.
I'm going to keep the old one to put up somewhere else.
Recycle. Right, all those in favour? Pretty unanimous.
Just this? Yeah.
13, 14, 15, 16 and 17. Do I have a proposer? Neil, David, seconder, all those in favour? Thank you. Right. Cemetery.
Kevin, I know not really, just say, obviously, thank you for the support for the cricket square maintenance. But having been up here for 40 years of playing sport up here, just to speak up to the groundsman, the ground has never been in better playing condition than it has been now, so thank you very much.
Right, thank you.
It's too much
Cemetery, have you all had a chance to actually read the cemetery minutes? All had the word in email? Yeah. Good. Right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's a recommendation. Proposed by Councillor Kieran Cooper and seconded by Councillor David Bard to recommend to full to repair the 8 high-risk stones at a cost of £656. All those in favour?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. 6, 7, another recommendation. It was proposed by Councillor Kevin Cuffley and seconded by Councillor David Bard to recommend to full to amend the rules and regulations for additional memorial tablets in front of headstone. Correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
To say that we
that we
can't support that. Yeah, that you can't, to say that we can't.
Yes. Yes. Right, all those in favour of that?
It's not everyone.
Yes.
No. Again?
Against? Thank you.
2. Yeah, fine.
Oh, so, I thought you said it again.
Oh,
I thought you were confused.
I thought I had
it's fine. 11, if that's fine, 11.
No, it's just me on my own.
Just, yeah.
Join the club. Right, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 is recommended for F&GP, and 14. Can I have a proposer? Kieran, thank you. David, thank you. All those in favour? Matters arising none. Planning application. Assumes. S279319 PO. Modification of planning obligation pursuant of Section 106 agreement dated 16th of October 2003 at 1 to 29 inclusive, 31 and 36 inclusive Stanley Webb Close. Comments,
No,
please?
Kieran's first. Kieran's first.
Oh, I was just going to ask whether, on a point of order, whether we could consider both these items together, as they're almost identical and seem to be...
Well, 3634 as well?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
I mean, if that doesn't work for some reason, then
Yes, but they do typically in one very important respect.
Well, I'm going back as we will. Okay.
Yeah, so I just wanted to chip in on this because particularly the Stanley Webb Close one, I've looked into, as I was explaining in the declarations of interest, the affordable housing element on Stanley Webb Close development is important to the planning for the H1D site. This application is a technical thing to change the arrangements by which the owners of the properties can raise money, can mortgage them, and there's nothing in it that I think is particularly material, and certainly nothing that changes any of the designation of these houses or anything. In fact, my understanding is that this particular application strengthens the case, because the original S106 agreement, there was no obligation for any owner to be committed to keeping the houses as social houses, but
there is.
Can we just get this in order?
Well, so anyway, I was thinking that there wasn't any objection.
I was going to make the point that there have been a whole series of these actually going through South County, as Brian probably would agree. And it's basically a device to enable RSLs to borrow more money against the housing stock. There is, however, a small risk in this, and that is that if a housing association would have failed completely and to default on its loans, then the houses are being valued at 70% of market value could effectively be sold off by the creditor, as I understand it.
By that?
Yes.
Sorry.
And in order to eliminate or to reduce that risk, in 2793 there is a clause being included that should that situation arise, the houses would have to be offered either to another RSL or back to the council. Now that clause is omitted in 3634, and I'm not sure why.
Yeah.
That's my concern. Which is the social landlord.
Thank you.
Housing association.
Exactly. So my comment was, I think Stanley Webb Close, that site is a rural exception site.
It was.
So the affordable housing is supposed to be the perpetuity.
Yes.
But there are some issues, for example, that came out of
Can I have silence, please?
there are some complications to that raised by the right to buy, where housing associations that are running rural exception sites have perversely been forced to sell property to the residents in there, and by compensation put another property somewhere else into the affordable housing scheme. So it's really a complicated area. What I would say is that I was disappointed that we didn't get any more supportive evidence about this with these applications, because it wasn't clear to me the conclusions that you draw, and that was quite useful to hear you say them. But that was only because I hadn't had that long to read them, and I wasn't aware these were coming forward. So I would like to have your comments reinforced by somebody in the planning department of the district council, because I'm just very concerned that although the motivation may be straightforward, and they've explained it in terms of the values and whether it's 30% or whether it's 100,000 and they wouldn't be able to transfer their loans and so on and so forth. The possibility that it may lead to the loss of affordable housing is one that we clearly don't want to do.
Stephen?
No, I honestly have nothing to add. It's one of those moments where I sit and listen to other people and just think, you know so much more than I do.
But I think the opacity of these planning applications is a real problem. I think, a couple of us have looked at them and have latched onto the fact that one of the main things it says is the number of affordable housing units will be reduced from 12 to 6, and we're all thinking that's a really bad thing. So if there's some kind of corner whereby that's not a really bad thing, I think it's very difficult for us to see that. And there's these great, slays the words involved in this, and some of us are well used to dealing with words, but it's just not comprehensive.
I have an offer to make, because for my own purposes and that's of the Parish Council, I'm quite happy to take this up to the planning department and make sure that our reservations that I think you'll share about the loss of affordable housing is not a consequence of either of these. But the question is, I don't know how we then formulate a response to this, because presumably, as long as there is no impact on the amount and longevity of affordable housing, then I don't see any of us having any problem.
Well, so I was going to propose that we support on the ground, and as long as on the condition that there's no impact on the current provision of affordable housing on this site.
Sorry, the next one actually says any document will need to effectively carve out any ongoing requirement for a lender in possession to use the property as affordable housing. So they're going to clearly take it out.
That's what I read.
But that's how they've actually put it.
Well, so shall we do 2793, because I don't think those.
I think 2793 is the more straightforward.
So I'm happy to propose that.
With that condition.
Support
with that condition.
no impact on the current amount of affordable housing.
Right.
And its longevity.
Yeah.
So I think this is the key for me, that somehow this form of wording, which looks to me that it's run by ambulance chasers. I mean, this is a very typical thing where it's boilerplated, and they go out and say, oh well, we can sort this out for you. You can rearrange for 106. So I think caution on this, and I'm happy delving into it a bit more. But if we
do I have a second for Kieran's proposal?
I'm quite reluctant for us to say that we support it with any conditions until we know what the hell it's actually about.
I've got to be honest, I'm with you. I am with you on that one, because with the next application, it's not clear again. So I would actually, for me, I would prefer to defer this until we've got further impact.
Do we have time to do that in terms of
extension of time?
Okay.
Highly unlikely they won't allow it.
Well, in which case I'll withdraw my proposal then.
Is it just again,
So-
because we can take it to planning, which is the 26th. Yeah.
All right, so let's bring it back to planning in 2 weeks.
And we should do that, definitely do that with 3634, because it's even more complicated.
And you'll look at your
So
investigate both of them.
I'm going in tomorrow, so I'll bring this on.
So we agree, I propose that we defer, do we have a second? Beck, all those in favour? Thank you. That goes to the same one, the second one as well.
So I'll do it for both, just
For
defer
S
to planning and...
3634, same, all agreed?
Yeah.
Okay. S 3753 19FL, ground floor extension, rear extension, sorry, first floor side extension and the erection of front porch at 1 North Terrace. Comments, please.
I think this is absolutely fine.
What do you propose, like I said?
I propose it's fine.
Do I have a second? David? Thank you. All those in favour?
Sorry, who proposed
Steve.
it? Sorry, Stephen, who's it?
David.
Thank you.
All those in favour? Yeah, abstentions? Against? No vote? Oh, no, you vote?
No. He's voted.
You happy?
I still think that's it.
Right, next one is for information only, all noted. Planning decisions noted. 159, accounts of the month of October. Any comments?
Both of it,
Thank you.
You're going to ask about the regulation.
I will look at
What's up, Kurt?
Tony was going to.
Can I just query, Alan's 2 lots of travel expenses, is that because the first meeting was cancelled?
Well, it was cancelled because it wasn't quorum, yes.
Yes, it was.
Okay, yeah.
The road association, there's 2 different prices, they're virtually the same thing. I just wondered why one should be 1.5 times the price of the other.
I will query it with the Remembrance Day did have more staff. They had 5 members for the road closure.
As opposed to
just one road.
Well, no, it's the same, but they had more staff because they wanted a TMS guy at each point, whereas we don't have that for bonfire.
Okay, are these comparable prices to last year?
Oh yes, well, for ours it is, for the bonfire night, it's the Remembrance Day, this is first year.
First year one.
First year we paid. Yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
Have you got Tony? Right, do I have a proposal?
Yes.
And second, all those in favour?
Yeah.
Right. To discuss Cambridge Sustainable Food Bid to Zero Carbon Communities.
That's what's the email
That's been emailed out. Here, Cambridge Sustainable Food is applying to South Cambs for zero carbon community funding to reduce greenhouse gases associated with food in South Cambs, in particular Sawston, Camborne and Costa. We have the support of members of Greener Sawston to make this bid and will be collaborating with them if the bid is successful. We also have the support of Councillor Brian Milnes, and the bid is submitted yesterday. What date was this? So it's submitted on the 31st.
they're just asking for our support.
Yeah, so basically they're asking if we will support stopping greenhouse gases, basically. I don't have a problem with this, honestly, apart from the cows, you know. But yeah, I mean, I propose that we support this. I'm happy with it.
It sounds like an entirely good thing, and there's various sorts of people who got very involved in it.
I looked through their website and it seems very good.
Yeah,
It's very good.
You second it?
Yes, absolutely.
Right. All those in favour?
Thank you.
Sorry, Kate, before we come to the next one, I should have declared the interest on 6-1 as a government meeting.
So, lucky you.
Well, you know.
Commitment!
My life is full of joy. So much joy. I
To
forgot.
discuss ignored request for LHI funding. This is, as far as I'm aware, to do with guarding the parking down there, and I think bollards being put up. And replaces this existing single yellow line with double yellow lines to install 2 new directional signs on a post to Linton Way Junction. This is all because also there's an issue with the turning circle down there. People are parking in there, and so you can't turn. For me, I think this is actually a county issue, and that the county should actually sort this out and fund it themselves. I don't see why, as a parish council, we should undertake this. So, if you're happy, I'm quite prepared to, after the election, to pursue this with the county and get them to do something about it.
Well, I wondered whether, and Julie looking into this as well, whether there was a problem because it knew it had already applied for this as an LHI, whether we're going to have trouble actually getting the county to do it. And as I understand it, the county have said they will do it as long as somebody contributes 10%.
That's what all their LHIs use.
That's
That's all their LHIs.
But it's only £460, so I wondered whether we might actually want to just...
The 10% figure is 10% off 400.
I mean, I think it's 400, basically saying 10% of the cost, it's a county.
It's nearly £5 grand.
It's £5 grand, it's only paying £500.
486.
Yeah, and I looked through the email trail. Could you step outside if you're doing conversation? That would be great, thank you. I looked back through the email trail and the county seemed to be absolutely adamant that parish councils always pay 10% of it, but I was kind of thinking, because it's quite urgent and it's quite dangerous up there for the sake of £450, I wondered whether it was worth us to...
I think we're setting precedent, and I'm worried about that. And I just think that it's a county issue. It's a county issue that we have asked them to sort it out. They haven't. They can. The school can put their own LHI in, which is what
that's the thing they can't.
So I mean, for me, it is a county issue. And coming back to the point that was made earlier by Stephen, why should we be in a position where we're taking their responsibilities on? You know, it is their problem.
So, am I right that they're putting this application in and it'll be considered amongst the other LHI bids? So
it would then go through the usual process, yes.
Right, so it hasn't been selected?
No, so they've put in the bid for it, and what they're asking is for us to pay the 10%, which is...
Understood.
Yeah.
Should it be selected?
Should it be selected,
Go ahead.
yes.
Well, yes, I think you know, it's slightly discourteous to put in a bid and then ask for support post-hoc.
No, we have spoken about it.
They did come to the
We have
meeting,
spoken
we did
about it.
discuss it, but we did discuss the LHI in.
Right, okay.
But
Just ask a quick question. I thought you mentioned bollards, but...
no, these are the yellow lines.
Okay.
Yeah, for character, it's the yellow lines one.
So one of the requests from the local residents along there
Oh, yes.
is to put bollards in to stop people parking and turning on over curbs because they've got green verges that aren't very green anymore. So it just seems to me that if they were doing this work, I don't know whether it would be, if it's too late to actually put that in just while people are there on the site. But it seems to me that we've got a proposal before us, and if we delay, whether it's the county council's direct responsibility or not, we've got a method of providing what they're looking for here for a relatively small contribution from us, even if it is another example of the costs of these things being pushed down to the lowest level.
But the other concern is if we agree to this, we wouldn't be able to put our own LHI in had this is successful.
Oh, but
That's theirs, not
yes,
ours.
well, as I understand it, the deadline for issue is passed.
Yes,
so
this is what it is.
Oh, is it?
Well, it must be, it's the next one.
It's got the issue
It's
passed.
already been submitted from what you're saying.
We've done the feasibility study.
Oh, right, okay.
But
I don't know if it's been
not our
submitted.
LHI bid.
No.
The school are asking us for a contribution to cover that cost, aren't they?
Mm.
Can the school put in their HIV? I thought it's
Well, they have.
I think if I anyone to put it, even members of the public.
But did you say, I'm confused, did you say they'd come to ask us about it?
They
They
had
asked
a
us
meeting
ages
with
ago.
us,
They asked ages ago about the parking and that, and we reported to say, well, it's a county issue, it's not parish
Oh, right,
council.
so we-
PW Alliance, and then you can put in an LHIB, so they've obviously gone down that process, but then asked
That's
us.
why I'm confused, and we advise them to make an LHI bid rather than going to county and telling them that they need
Well, that's
to
what,
sort it out.
well, we'd go to county and if they say, well, they want county will say make an LHI bid.
But Kevin is saying that we shouldn't do the LHI bid, we should just go back to county and tell them that we don't want to make a contribution.
No, we should go back to the council and say they should do.
They should pay the 10%.
So
No,
it says
so
that-
that's what the problem lies. They pay for the whole thing, not us. We contribute a penny.
Right, what it specifically says on the county account website, one is that anyone can put the bid.
Yeah.
But what it says at the end of the second paragraph is, the applicant is expected to provide a minimum contribution of 10% of the total scheme cost.
And that's what the school is asking us.
So that, so yeah, I mean, I know that's kind of, that sort of explains, right, yeah.
I have a suggestion. If they put the application in, I think.
Yeah, because it's from the council,
Right.
shouldn't
Well, they have done.
If the application is successful, the school will be on the hook to pay the 10% because, as Stephen says, the applicant has to pay it. If at that point, if they're successful, they should come to us for a donation request towards that cost. But we shouldn't decide it now because they may not get, the scheme may not get selected.
And in the meantime, you can be going and arguing with county that they should be charging anyway for it.
Okay,
Well, that's fine.
I was just using my little argument, I don't think that this decision will lead to the school changing its actions. I think it's a fairly safe decision on our part.
Okay,
Okay,
I'll
so-
apply and do that.
We'll do that then, okay? Right, come. Resident request to remove cut back tree at Woodlands Road, at Woodland Road. Is this the tree that we was discussing before?
Yes.
Yes, and you've all had an email and a picture.
Wow.
I would suggest that actually, is it called cropping? No.
Pollard.
No.
Oh.
Crowning is the expression. Or a reasonable amount of crowning to reduce the height and display of the branches, seems to me, would give them some recompense for the fact that it's grown up over time and is creating more shadow on their land.
Their complaint is though that the roots are taking water from the land as well as the shading. That's why they're scale.
So I'm suggesting an alternative to their request to come in now.
Okay, but
I've been talking to Joe about this one because it's a request that we have fairly often, that people who are next to trees see them as inconveniences. What I think often doesn't occur to them is that for a great many other people, those trees are a huge resource. And I think I've been hugely reluctant to set a precedent, and in the past when people have made requests like this, we've said, sorry, no, we don't cut down large, healthy trees that give pleasure to lots of people and perform a vital biological function as well, just because they're a bit inconvenient for you. And, you know, we're sorry, but if you buy a house that's got a tree nearby, you can assume it's going to grow. It is what they do. And that's what I would want to say in this case.
I think the other issue of this is, taking on board exactly what you just said, is they are concerned that the roots going into their property and creating damage as well. Again, if you bought the house with the tree there, I get, but just want them to put that in the mix as well.
But then we've had the tree survey done and nothing's been reported on the roots and the trees mature, there's no action, the ground is good.
And also,
the stem is fair, so
cut
there's
down
no
the
necessary
tree and the
action.
roots die, the ground subsides around the dead roots, so you don't necessarily
Tony.
solve the problem at all.
Can I just confirm whereabouts on Woodland Road this is, please?
It's on our recreation ground.
No, it's not. It's not. Well, it's not recreation. It's when you go down Princess Drive, that, you know, near you, it's not.
We'll pass on the photo. So, photo.
The Tony pins coming down the ship street.
Thank you.
So that's looking from the bottom back towards Braben Road.
It's on the eastern edge of the park.
Yes, yeah.
So we've had a proposal for crowning.
No, it's a suggestion. He
That's
proposed it.
I'm suggesting as a response, because they're losing quite a bit of light, and crowning trees is a regular process. So it's a positive response.
Joan?
They're only losing light in the summer, and it's deciduous trees, so surely it's probably a small bit shade. They built the extension after the trees there anyway. So it should, that would have, the trees already there. So I don't think we should.
No, I think I agree. Crowning doesn't necessarily give very nice results. And I think, it's important to state that, nobody has a right to light. It's not a thing, though. I think it's often a sort of myth that you do have.
Right, so do I have a proposal for anything?
Well, I would propose that we reject whatever the correct terminology is.
So you're saying as it is?
We decline to take any
Just a
action.
suggestion, or did you want to propose that we do that? Because we'll take the votes as we go along.
It seems as though there's not great deal of support for my suggestion, so unless I've got that wrong, I'll let it lie.
Right, so Stephen.
Well, whatever the correct terminology is, we
Yep.
decline to take action. I'm sure you know what the correct terminology is.
We leave as is.
Yeah, whatever.
Do I have a seconder? Joan, thank you very much. All those in favour?
I don't think it's going to be unanimous, is it? Right, hold on. Hands, keep your hands up, sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Objections? Abstentions?
Abstain.
No.
Mr. Mallows.
No votes? Or abstaining?
Oh, you voted for it? I must be quick, sorry.
Okay?
No, I didn't.
We'll keep your hand up.
Right, yeah.
You okay, Joe?
Yes, yeah.
Right, to discuss donation request from Sawston Fund 1 and
No.
Missed that one.
Allotment 163.
Sanitary one.
Oh yeah, to allotment holder request to remove a walnut tree on the allotment. Just one minute. Comments please?
I don't know if the players sent this through, if you had the information, did you?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, you should have had, there's,
It talks about how
someone's
the
allotment, the canopy extends over 3 neighbouring properties, causing harm to the surrounding ground through the chemicals it produces, prevents other trees on their plot from producing crop. They've sought advice from a local tree expert, and they have decided they would like to take the tree down. Is it something? Well, then they're asking if it's something the parish council will do, or do they get tree surgeon to do? But obviously, it's on
Whose
allotment.
tree is it? Ours?
Well, it's on the allotment, so, and it's been there for years, so they took it, when they took the allotment on, the tree was there. It was planted probably about 30 years ago.
They're saying that it's a perfectly normal walnut tree, but
It's a beautiful tree.
chemicals that damages their land.
Well, it does give quite a bit. I mean, it is quite a big tree.
Joe was just saying that the person who wants to remove the tree is suggesting that he's had a letter from the tree surgeon, but we have no information from a tree surgeon in front of us, so we cannot take that on board.
So ask for.
So we need to proof? Reject. Ask for proof.
Do we want to take that step, or do we want to?
Well, I think we need to have the proof of the tree surgeon in the first place, to see what their comments are, and then we can make our own judgment on after seeing those comments.
Sorry, the request comes from somebody that says the tree surgeon says what?
We've sort of, well, it's a local fruit tree expert.
Well, that can be anybody.
Anyway, yeah,
Joe,
sorry, but it doesn't read as though the tree expert has actually said anything.
No.
It says we have sought advice from a local fruit tree
and they have
expert
decided to
about
take it
this.
down.
And have decided. That's we have decided. We would like to take it down.
On the advice of the fruit.
Well, surely that the that's what we get.
So what would you like me to do?
I think under the circumstances of where we are is, there seems, and that's quite been pointed out, there doesn't seem to be any evidence of there being a tree surgeon involved in this.
That's not what I said. I've said that they say they've asked the tree surgeon, but whatever their advice was doesn't necessarily appear in
reflect
this
to what
request.
they, yeah.
So can I just suggest as a reaction we ask for more detail if they
More detail evidence.
then we ask them for more information.
Do I have a second?
No, we don't need to vote on it, that's fine.
That's fine.
Do that, I'll take it back to the
Okay, so
Mrs. White also said to them that we are not going to be cutting down a perfectly healthy tree without...
no, but we're waiting for this information. Okay. Right, moving on, 165 to discuss donation request from Sawston Fund and Walk for 2020. Which is
they are asking for £500.
£500. We do support this every year.
Yes, so I'll propose that we
Second.
Yeah.
All those in favour? Excellent. Right. This could be a long discussion. To discuss boundary review S106 requirements for Sawston. This is all to do with the boundary review with Fagram. It was agreed at the last meeting that the Fagram would go away and discuss what their shopping list would be, and we would go away and discuss what our shopping list would be. And then we would meet up again with the relevant officers and discuss what we can and can't have. Well, I think is that a fair assumption? Because I wasn't at the meeting. So the idea is, has anyone got any suggestions on what they would like for our shopping list for S106?
So can we just put this into context? So the discussion that we had with Abraham was indeed driven by the suggestion of the having a boundary review because of the mismatch between the new developments on the eastern side of the village. Interestingly, Abraham said we have no issue with the boundary review. What they're particularly interested in is their proportion of the section 106 money. And actually, one of the potential mistakes that they have made, not as particularly relevant, is that it would make a lot of difference whose boundary was where, because the section 106 will be divvied up according to need. But what we've said is a way forward so that they don't try and use the boundary review as a point of resistance, shall I put it that way? That we get a heads of agreement, a memorandum of understanding between the two parishes that looks at the whole amount of section 106 that's likely to be around, which is about 1.1 million, and to suggest that a third of that, or roughly 30%-ish, would cover the costs, for example, of the £300,000 that is left towards their community centre that they're wanting to build. And the feeling of the meeting was that that was a perfectly reasonable proportion under the circumstances, and that we would be happy to support that at this meeting as a suggestion going forward.
Thank you. The one thing I would like to say about it, I mean, I couldn't attend because of personal reasons, but I did know that it was actually a pretty poor turnout from our parish councillors. And as it is it is a substantial item, I would expect to see a lot more support from the parish councillors on this, because it is very important and it could lead to other issues as well. So that said, are we agreed then that we're agreeing to them having 30%?
Well, I think for me, although in terms of proportion, that's what it looks at, we have to bear in mind that Section 106 has to be allocated to particular items of expenditure. So although they would prefer it to be a percentage, and we don't know what the total will be, so we effectively have to apply. So even though the broad budget for this, and this is using the previous H1B site, which is the one to the north, a rough estimate, then I think what we're going to have to do is get a memorandum of understanding that states what those items are likely to be and their cost, so that we can move forward with the Section 106 officers.
Just for total clarity on this, Brian, this is for, because we've already got the H1B that's been sorted. This is purely for H1C, isn't it?
This is entirely about H1C, so the likely budget, or figure for consideration is going to be about 1.1 million if it's in proportion to H1B, which is likely. And they are specifically looking at 300,000, which is their budget for finishing off their community centre. And then, of course, the rest, the 800,000 or so of that 106 would be for allocation to Sawston projects. And the question for us is, have we got any?
Yes.
Yes, we have.
Yes.
Like Beck.
And have we costed them?
Yes, so I think the question for this meeting might be, does that seem like a fair proportion if we're thinking in really practical terms of how we're going to need to improve the source of infrastructure to take account of a huge number of new residents? And my initial reaction is, we're going to need to be thinking about schools and sports facilities and quite a lot of different things, and that actually a third of that money going to Bagram, it seems quite unlikely that residents of those houses are going to be making use of Bagram facilities to that extent. So to me that does seem disproportionate.
Okay, it's good. David?
if we're developing a shopping list, obviously Beck's point about education side, which would be cost of living.
So this was not, this was excluded education.
The big items, line items,
I think there's two big items. Number one is Hinchway Pavilion, and number two is if the Cambridge City do gift us the land, is the pavilion there. Now we are talking about roughly £450,000 per pavilion, which is 900,000 just for two pavilions. So bringing it into 1.1, therefore it's all right, does fall apart a bit there.
We are budgeting for the.
We are budgeting
for it. It won't be all of that, but
we've already allocated budget from H1B to first pavilion on Cambridge City site. Just by if it's not necessarily relevant, the transfer of assets from the Satchel family firm that own the current site for H1B is imminent. They're working on transfer at the moment, so obviously that is effectively predicates what they're going to do with the football stadium.
Right, okay. Ben?
I'd like to think beyond sport as well, because I think, what my opinion of sport is, I think we're going to need some more spaces in the village for people to meet. And one of the things that I would like to see us do is actually build a village hall, because I think we're reliant on church facilities with all the ensuing complications of that. I think that with this expansion of the village, we are going to want to think about building something else as well.
That's your town hall. Again, justified comments. It seems to be this corner seems to do most of the conversation here. Is there any other people who have got any suggestions on what the shopping list should consist of? Taking into consideration, and Bex is absolutely right, is we've got to think about the wider community as well.
Depending on the outcome of the South East Cambridge Transport Study, if that goes ahead, there's a stopping point. We have to look very seriously at additional parking, particularly in view of the conversation we had earlier in the meeting. Because at the moment, there is minimal parking proposed there, and you're going to get huge problems because people are going to park all around the streets and new developments we are here.
Absolutely.
So that ought to go on the list as well. I think we ought to be getting it from the South East Transport Study, actually. If not, if we have to make a contribution, that is something that I think we ought to look at.
Something new, but
aren't we considering doing some improvements to Mill Lane Pavilion as well?
that's have come out of the development.
Will that all come out of it?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
So it was, again, part of this change over the last 2 or 3 years.
It was, yes, it was, yes.
Whereas
Yes, yeah.
you could effectively have a blanket requirement, section 106. It has to be specified now. So I think I'm right in saying crew days on Mill Lane was specified for the Mill Lane Pavilion.
But we'll have to have additional money to that.
There isn't. I thought there was additional monies to go there.
Well, there is, well,
So just, to come back to the parking thing, I think if we're looking at this in purely practical terms, if we're looking at how Sawston needs to change to accommodate this extra population, given that we've got a high street full of useful shops and already parking problems, we're going to need investment. And if you're looking at it in practical terms, I mean, are there actually any shops in Baybrook? Do they have a village post office? So the people who live in these houses are not going to be flooding into Baybrook to use the facilities there, are they? So I'm coming back to the proportions of this, that however much we think it might be nice to divvy it that way and then agree the boundary review and finish that discussion, it just seems to me to be disproportionate.
Right.
I can't see it any other way.
Bill.
Jane was first and I was second.
The reason they wanted 300,000 was to finish their hub, which they say is used by Baybrook and Sawston.
Has anyone here ever used Baybrook Hub?
Yeah, the cricket club.
It's the cricket club. So there are any issues parts as well. That's why they need the 300,000 to finish it.
There are sorts of people's risk.
Yeah.
And also people that work at Baybrook Institute that come from Sawston that would use the hub. So the answer to your question is yes.
But that's how they get to the figure.
That 30% that's banded around, that isn't hard and fast, is it?
Well, no,
it's not an unofficial gentleman's agreement.
Well, actually, the memorandum of understanding would be the basis of any agreement going forward. That's what we would. That's what Section 106 officers want from the two parishes, so that we can go forward without any arguments over the boundary review itself, because this whole issue over governance of those new houses on a very local level is, at least to me, very obvious where it should sit. And those houses are adjacent, abutting Sawston, and that's the obvious place for it to fit. So this is a way that we can move that whole thing forward, because Abraham would get something that they're looking for it, and the forward management of those new properties isn't an issue.
But the sum proposed doesn't seem to have anything to do with the practicalities of the situation. It just seems to be a random number that happens to be the amount of money they currently want, which is what it was.
Because that's the way Section 106 works, is that you allocate it to a particular project, and which is why I was thinking it. So it's not quite 30%, whatever the proportion is. It's
near enough.
It's the fixed figure of what we need to finish their hub.
It's 3/11.
It was, yes.
Do we need to get costings on the things that we want?
Yes, that's what they want us to go. So this next meeting is the 21st of November at 7:30 here, and they would like us to actually go back with costings for things that we want
to do.
Which I've already given you two things, and that's we're talking about 900,000 there.
We need to do some calculations on the money that we've been allocated for the first pavilion on Cambridge City out of H1B, because there was a proportion for that. So if your two pavilions are 900,000 between them, and we've got a proportion already out of H1B, then we can do that, Neil.
If you remember, the cricket wanted to extend this, didn't they? Because they're getting something. We've got some input there.
Yes.
So we've got a cash commitment coming up.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just like Beck. I don't see why we should satisfy all theirs when we've got a need in several areas.
Okay, well, we've had the discussion, and we're starting to go around in circles a little bit now. So
I was just going to say,
the next meeting is on the 21st of November, which is next Thursday. 7:30 here. So I'll recommend that we all come to that.
Sorry, Kevin, that meeting is where we
need to
are
put
going
it
to
forward.
expect
Yeah,
to
put
put
forward.
forward our
Yeah.
proposals. And what I'm picking up from Neil is that you're actually relatively unhappy with that proportion. So
Because we seem to have 3 areas where we want to spend money. They're satisfying their one need. We've got 3 lots of need. I don't see how you're going to satisfy our parishioners with the 2 that he's suggesting and this.
I'm not sure that's true because we haven't got the cost. I
No,
don't.
It's more definite numbers.
The issue that is Brian's rightly said, is we need to clarify what figures are needed and what we clearly need. But I do tend to agree that I think even with the figures that we do get, the proportions probably it's not going to work in as the way they want it, because there are other issues that we've got, and Bex rightly said, i.e. a village hall, there's those sort of considerations as well. So I think
Sorry, can I just say?
we're going round in circles. So the point of the matter is here is next week we've got the meeting. We'll get the figures in place that we need to get in place.
So that meeting, we
Well,
haven't got an agreement.
Eh?
We haven't agreed,
We haven't agreed anything.
what we're going to get costings on.
Right, so we're going to agree on, okay, what one cost is on? So
And
the one
who's
cost
gonna
is
get-
on the
who's
2
gonna get-
pavilions, the potential cricket building, village hall.
I can look into that.
Look at
That's
this one.
why 1.2 million in 1999.
The list will go on, so I think we need to have this meeting next week, even though we're not going to actually be able to go forward with the actual cost, because we can't expect Joe to come back with this detail by next week.
No, I don't think Joe's going to have time to do any of
Well,
this.
to be fair, this is a nice little project for one of you councillors to take.
Absolutely. So we're not going to have that information required for the 21st. So we have 2 choices. One is we cancel the meeting until we can get the information, or we go to that meeting with the very bland information that we have and see what comes out of it.
But we can get some ballpark figures. People can find out what the situation is with the pavilions.
Do you want to have somebody to take that on?
I can look into the village halls.
What about the rest of the projects?
The other one is space for parking, isn't it? Yeah.
Sorry, both of those 2 are very ephemeral. They don't exist at the moment. They're intangible.
Actually, I've brought this up in the past.
It's not that you haven't brought it up as a suggestion, but we haven't got anything concrete. There's nothing there. There's no location. There's no size. There's no cost involved.
There is a location, because I brought this up when we renegotiated the Vintage contract. I said, I think we are going to be needing to look at that plot that's always been a plot that was intended for a village hall. And I think with the increase in our population, we are going to be needing that site and going to need some kind of hall on it. Because we're going to run out of space in the village.
But that's your perspective, and that's great. But I don't hear anybody else having agreed with it, or done anything more with it.
Well, that's
So
what we're discussing at the
it's
moment.
intangible. There's a no concrete proposal there.
Kieran?
I think we're pushing were the boundary not an issue, the S106 negotiation for H1C would happen we'd have more time. We're trying to accelerate it in order to resolve more quickly the boundary issue. Is that my thinking? But I wonder whether there's some compromise rather than going at the speed that we're trying to resolve the boundary issue, which I certainly agree needs resolution.
You see, what was quite interesting there is that, as I said, from that meeting, they categorically said that the boundaries isn't an issue, and clearly they're wanting to use it as leverage to get...
Well, in which case, can we not decouple the 2 things? And on the 21st, let's push ahead with the boundary review and get them to agree the boundary review, but on the basis that we need to do more work to cost our S106.
Not leverage, it looks like a bribe.
I think part of the problem is that this whole discussion is entirely hypothetical. There's until the planning application goes in, you know how many houses are going on their site. We have no idea what the value of the S106 will be. But we have a
Well, you haven't noticed
And
that.
if the review goes to referendum, potentially, and potentially the review goes to referendum.
Yeah.
Sorry, that you've just confused two completely different issues. No, David was talking about the number of homes that might be built on H1C, and you've responded by...
Yeah, but if there's no agreement, a referendum will take place.
So what the boundary?
Yeah.
So that's something to do with the number of houses on H1C?
It all becomes relevant, it all becomes part of the same thing, if you actually look at it, the whole picture.
You look at it?
Yeah, but it does become part of it. So I think, now, to move this on, because time is getting on, that we have the meeting, we go ahead with the meeting next week, we discuss the boundary review, they can put their shopping list in, we're not going to have the detail for our shopping list. But again, I ask, is someone prepared to take up finding out the information for the shopping list?
Okay, so the suggestion that I'm going to come up with is if we had the whole of this and the budget was 1.1 million, what would we spend on it? Because our in extremis position is that we would say we don't want Mayor to have anything at all. So we'll have all 1.1 million. So what will we spend it on?
The said things that we've said.
All the other chat, Brian, is they ask for 300,000 to get their thing built, and we only get 800,000, and we only get one built and part of the other. I think that seems unfair.
But bear in mind that we've already got a significant portion of the first pavilion allocated from the first.
We've already established that. The point that I'm making
Well, sorry,
is,
because it doesn't seem to be all.
we have this meeting next week, or we don't, and we go in with what we got. That's the bottom line. You know, so that's the choice we have. Because Kieran's right, absolutely right, when he said we can go and discuss the boundary, and we're not going to have the information to discuss what we want in place. We're just not going to have the time to get that information together of the costings and everything that we need to put together.
So if we think that Bainham have said they don't have a problem with the boundary changing, can we not just agree the boundary change and postpone this discussion until later?
No, but no, they want to know they're going to get that share.
They're not going to agree it probably if they're not going to get anything out of it, aren't they?
Well then, do we need to, is it that what we need to ask this meeting is, are you happy for them to have that share? Because some of us have said that we're not, and I don't know whether anybody feels that they are, but they'd rather stop talking about it and just...
But the point is, we've got to go in with our own shopping list.
Basically, the
and our
106
costings.
officer it was agreed at the meeting, the 106 officer was there, and he said, obviously the money you've got, it could potentially have this much money. What would you want for that? Because what they want to do is write up the 106 agreement and have these things in the agreement rather than just a pot of money, which is why he's asking
for the details.
A wish list as such as if you have this much money, what would you want to spend it on? So they can write it into all the agreements and for Baybrook as well.
So, last time, do we have the meeting next week or don't we?
I don't think we can then. If you're saying that the discussion entirely hinges on S106, we can't until we have a more detailed chat.
We're going to decide what the wish list is going to look like.
Well, that's the only suggestions we've had are 2 pavilions and a village hall. That's
Yeah, sure, that's
And the Crikey pavilion here, the extension they want to do.
But then should we not have a meeting to discuss, to maybe discuss what we want? Because the 106 officer is going to be there as well, he's chairing it, just to... basically, it was agreed to, Baybrook are discussing it in November as well, bring the information to the next working group meeting and hopefully start fine-tuning the agreement. So we almost need a starting point. If we don't have this meeting, who's going to get together to then get this list? We need to...
Right, so... we seem to be going all over being bounced around here. Is that there's, to me, it's a simple question. Is, are we either going to the meeting blind, which is what we are doing, or we don't have the meeting? Because we're not going in with the information. All we're going in is with a request of we want 2 buildings, 3 buildings, the extensions of the cricket club and parking facilities. We have no idea of costings.
That 1.1 million is that definite? 1.1 million? No,
It's a ballpark figure based on the size of H1B and basically doubling it all slightly more. So we've said something in the region of 350 houses compared to the 158 in H1B. But there's some.
Well, in the current South Cambs housing trajectory, you're only looking at 200 million.
Yeah, that's the remaining of
That's the
It's not it, but it's not.
Can we have one meeting, please?
The trouble is that the economics of each site is unique, and until you actually work that out, you have no idea. Or you've got ballpark figures, okay, but you haven't any detail as to what your S106 will be. And I mean, it's a consequence of our negotiation with the developer. You know,
Can we not go back with some ballpark figures for the facilities that we think will be needed? No.
Yes, if you're volunteering to prepare ballpark figures, then I think for the two pavilions, the cricket club extension here and the village hall.
What's the cricket club extension?
Well, this extension that we're doing on recreation.
So, Kieran, if we add the village hall to our wish list and say it could cost £1.5 million based on David's 1.2 million inflation or whatever it is, but let's say £1.5 million, that's blown that section 106 out of the water. It's not.
But the point we are trying to make to them is that we will need to make big changes to the infrastructure in Sawston to accommodate that extra population as against what they're going to have to do. So I think what we're trying to do is provide a shopping list that says to them, actually the split that they're proposing doesn't seem reasonable to us, and we need some figures, however they back it up.
If that's the view of the council, then I'm perfectly happy that that's the...
Okay, well that's my, make that a proposal then and see whether it is the view of the council, because I don't see any other way forwards.
We're not going forward, we're going backwards. So we're just going round and round and we're talking about the same thing again and again and again. The bottom line of this is simple. Meeting next week, we're going with ballpark figures. If the S106 officers are not happy with that, we will take it away, and that's the only way we can deal with this at this current time.
So let me just clarify something, because it's not section 106 officers that were here. James is the civic affairs guy, and the memorandum of understanding was to be able to give something to the section 106 that said it's effectively a pre-arranged package. Both councils agree with that. If the message from this meeting is that no, Abraham, we're not happy with you having 300,000 to 800,000 in that sort of proportion, you need to think again, then that's the conversation that we need to have.
That's what we're going to have next week.
But this meeting needs to inform the meeting on the 21st about our general position. Because that's what we said. We would bring it back to our respective councils and then take the results of that consultation.
Let's simplify that. Let's simplify that. I'm going to put to the vote. Do we agree, does this council agree that Bagram, as a ballpark figure, not a guaranteed figure, a ballpark figure, should be entitled to 30% of S106? All those against that.
Sorry,
no.
What are you trying to?
Why are you mixing? That is the ballpark figure.
So
you're mixing everything up. Why?
So you've just said 30%, and what I explained earlier.
It's a ballpark figure. That's what you said.
It has to be allocated for a particular. So the situation is. If
you just said to us, do you want us to agree that Bagram has 30%? That's what you just said.
Would you rather it was the sum in question than a percentage?
Thank you. So
let's propose, does the meeting agree that we should be giving 300k out of the S106 money to Bagram?
Well, I'll go with that.
I think you probably need to ask for agreements first rather than disagreements first.
Yes.
So Beck's proposing,
It's through Kevin's proposal. I second Kevin's proposal.
Right, but before we go, that extension of time, can I have a proposal for extension of time?
You have to do it till 10 o'clock.
We need 10 minutes.
Yeah, 30 minutes. All those in favour? I know you won't vote.
No, hold on, because if they don't all vote, we can't do it. Right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Abstain.
No vote, against, abstained.
Two against, one abstaining?
Yeah, got it, thank you. Right.
Right, so we've had a proposal of 300k and seconded by Bex that Baycom have 300k. All those in favour of
I'm sorry, but what happens if it is only, you're voting on, proposing to vote on a certain figure. If the total figure which we may get is 600,000, then we're giving half away, and I'm totally against it.
Thank you, because that was what I was...
Well, that's more simplified.
But and the difficulty is...
So just say a percentage.
We're just trying to say a percentage, and Brian had disagreed with that. Why don't the two of you decide what proposal you'd like to make?
Well, we're going to go nowhere with this. So the bottom line of this is because it hasn't been discussed properly, the only solution that I can have is this meeting is we do not attend, we cancel the meeting, we come back.
But how's that going to make this move setting forward? That's the problem.
Because we can then get the ballpark figures of what we're going to spend before, and put back to our meeting and see if we're happy with that. Then we can then come up and say if 300k is too much for Baywood, and so I would say let's say ours comes to 50, that means 100,000.
Why haven't we done that already?
Exactly.
So this is an agenda item.
Yeah.
And I did email
And it was emailed out, and no one's done anything. You've heard it
done
on
anything.
Yeah.
All right. So if we carry on doing nothing,
and I asked tonight if somebody was prepared to take it on, and no one's put their hands up apart from Beck. The only person that said they're prepared to find some information now is Beck. Any other councillors are prepared to go out there and get the information that we need.
I've just done a quick back of the envelope here, right? So 2 million, so based on your 98 valuation of the village hall, I'd say you need 2 million for that to do something now.
Yeah, well, that's becoming irrelevant now, David.
Yeah,
The bottom line of this is we're moving this forward, and we're not moving it forward, we're actually going backwards. So,
Mr. Chairman, Brian said they wanted 311s. That should be the figure we're voting on, or you should be putting forward.
then you've got Tony's argument.
If we get a
311s of what?
reduced figure,
Then that would be 311ths of whatever figure's given.
Well, then you might get more than
So
10,000.
it's not, is Brian happy with the fraction? Sorry, Jen.
No, yeah, so it's 300,000 or 30%.
Whichever's.
Yeah.
Do it for both then? Whichever is the smallest.
Yes.
So if it's a larger amount, they'll still only get their 300,000. If
So
it's a smaller
300k
amount,
or
they'll only
30%,
get
whichever's
30%.
smaller.
Okay, so we're amending our proposal to
Yes.
say, would we be happy for Baycom to have £300,000 or 30%, whichever smaller, out of the S106 money?
Yes?
All those,
Are you proposing that?
No, I don't.
Good,
that's still your proposal, I think. Let's not change that, Joe.
Right, Joe proposed that, and seconded
Oh,
that.
no, right. Yeah, right. All those in favour of that, they only get 300,000 or 30%, whichever is the less. Good?
So you want them to get that much?
You want them to get that much, is what you're saying?
Yeah? Right, everyone votes it right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
That's strange. 1, 4.
Those against?
2. What you understand?
I'm staying because there's just not enough information out there.
But we're still having the meet. Are we having the meeting?
We're still having the meeting, we're going in with that.
Hang on,
So can I ask,
But we need all councillors need to come to this
yeah,
meeting.
well, can I ask,
We need
is
everyone.
anyone not going to be here next Thursday?
So there you go. See if we were
There
to
you go.
discuss it.
We've lost the argument straight away.
well, it's less than, it's just over a week, isn't it? And if people can't be there, they can't be there. It's purely, we're not paid to be here, as we said before.
It's not less than a week, it's already been,
Yeah.
we already knew about the date.
Well, we didn't, did we?
Yeah, it was been the
Yes,
agenda
yes.
for a long time, and it was the minutes were
Yeah.
produced.
So basically, we could be outvoted by Bailey.
Second?
We could be outvoted by Bailey.
So
We can just give them the money they want anyway,
It's
so
just a
it's
discussion. It's trying to move the thing forward.
Okay.
Is where we're at. There's no voting proportionally between Abraham Parish Council and Sawston. We take our own decisions, they take theirs, and it's something that we can agree on something.
So can I have your apologies for next week now then, please?
Clashes with scouts. I run scouts, Jane already knows.
No, I'm not going to scouts.
You're not?
I will be here between 8. I don't think it's round still half
So
7,
sorry,
then I'll
Neil,
drop from there to here.
Not to have a previous engagement.
Alan?
I'm working.
You're working? Stephen, you going to be here?
Yes.
Colin?
Working.
Working? Joe, you'll be here. David? Brian? I'm sure you'll be here. Beck?
Good thing that I don't want to come.
I didn't have no choice. I'll be here. Right, okay. Right, moving on. To agree the date of the bonfire night for 2020, which will be...
Saturday, that's
a Wednesday.
7th November.
Wednesday.
So we're going for 7th, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
Just propose a vote on that.
Do we want to stick to having it on an era Saturday?
Yeah.
Or is there, would you not want to have it on the 5th?
No, because then you do have like the big one in town and stuff, so we don't think it's better.
And it'd be, I think you'll find we'd be better supported within the community on that side.
2nd of the 7th?
7th.
Yeah, 2nd,
All those in favour?
just so I can get all the letters out now.
Right.
Start booking it.
Right, to discuss the energy quotes for street lighting. Well, next Brian and have done a load of work behind the scenes on this with obviously Joe. I've contacted...
I'm not sure that's a proper representation.
No.
I mean,
We wasted a lot of time.
What myself and Joe did, and you came in towards the end of the meeting, was discover just how difficult it was to find any useful information on which we could make a decision.
We spent some time trying to deconstruct the material that was presented with us.
Anyway,
so for example, we make phone calls where you go through the menu system and then you go, oh, goodbye. The woman from Power Networks was laughing on the phone because she said, I've had dozens of people phone us trying to work out what's going on. We got through to the people that they recommended who were dealing with this. There's two people that she nominated, and they have an answering machine that says, leave us a message and we'll get back to you within 28 working days. So we've got this system, this situation right across the county. It seems from what Joe's found from some of her fellow clerks across Cambridgeshire that some have already gone ahead and done new contracts. But the cost of managing this is the same whether you've got 4 street lamps or 400. And it seems absolutely crazy that the county council was managing this without a particular problem. They wanted to save some money in managing it and they've divvied up the cost and increased that substantially, whether it's 2 or 3 times by the time you aggregate what parish councils are doing across the county. It's the most ridiculous thing I've come across in a long, long time. So we spent an hour and a half getting absolutely nowhere.
Not that I necessarily think it's a good idea, but how come some parish councils just decided to get on with it?
Because
Sorry, I don't need that.
So it's not costing them.
Right, so the ones who decide to go on with it are effectively in a completely different circumstance.
Probably small.
But they're not,
Yeah, but what I was sort of potentially getting at was, I suppose what I was getting at is have people ended up making a decision because they've been there against the football so many times and they've given up. But you don't think that's kind of what's happened. It's more that people are just kind of, well, I don't know, 4 lights, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's quite...
I'm not suggesting we do give up.
No.
The answer to your question is it's quite possible that those parishes that have signed up to one of these deals that are being offered have just gone, oh, well, we've got 3 different quotes from different suppliers, we'll just go for that one, and then it's done.
Yeah.
To clarify the situation, I have actually contacted the county, spoke to a female called Emma. They have set up a meeting on the 20, she has set up a meeting on the 28th, of which Joe, myself, Brian and David will be attending at the highway to get it, to actually thrash this all out and get it all sorted out. So
Was that the diary appointment I got today?
yes, it was explained to her that the situation that we're in, it doesn't make any sense for them. And the first point that I pointed out to her was, it's the term they use is metre free or metre something, and we've got unmeters. Thank you very much. And there's 3 metre readings in there. So number one is how can it be unmetered when you've got 3 metre readings?
So they're virtual meters.
Yes.
Right, so that sorry.
So the thing about it is we're having a meeting on the 28th to get this sorted out.
Jokey as Brian's account was, I think it's a serious point to go back to them and say there is no way to find out enough information to make
that's what I have to mention. I told them. Yeah, that's exactly what I told them, straight to the point. Emergency plan update.
Quickly.
Very
Due to personal circumstances, I've not done anything for last
Do you want me to put it on December's, or do you want me to wait for you to tell me to put it on?
Get it on in January, so
January,
yeah. Go forward.
The 1st January.
Okay, well, county councillors report and update. Due to the fact there's a general election coming up, we're now in Perda, so unfortunately there's nothing really I can give you a report on. What I can say is that I was pleased to see that the High Street has been resurfaced, and also we had the Sideway official opening up, which Brian Bex.
Kevin, what they're going to do with the gullies and the manholes and things like that?
It's all, if you look in the contract, they'll always come back and they're going to get all that.
And what about where the 2 areas join? Are
They
they
can
going
get
to
it
be
all tightened up, they come back and finish the job completely. There has to be a process of time.
just like the daffodils on the side?
Just like the daffodils on the side of the hill, you're absolutely right. Regarding the cycleway, coming back before it gets brought up, is the signage and the lights. I can't think of his name now. Said they went away with some cyclists to look at it, to point out the dangers that are there, that Mike has obviously made very clear, and they're going to report back to us what they're going to do and when they're going to do it. Okay?
Provided they do something.
Provided they do something. Right.
Sorry, that's one question. Do we have a figure for how much has been spent on the high street, roughly?
On?
The high street, or the cost? Just rough cost?
No, I have.
The reason the reason I'm asking, not to kind of go into the problem, is that, you know, I sit here and others sit here and, you know, I'm very good at kind of saying, you know, people should do this, people should do that, and we're quite rightly saying, you know, they're giving up on the street lights and everything else. I would kind of like to be fair, and it would be reasonable.
I've got that information now.
It would be reasonable for the amount of money the county council has spent on Sawston's High Street to be kind of recorded somewhere in minutes, or to end up in some note in the village magazine or something, just in order to be fair to all of public bodies who do things.
Yeah, no problem.
It would also be nice figures set against the people who are whinging about the cycle.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Well, the cycleway, which was funded by GCP, was about 700,000.
Yeah, I mean, you know, when money is spent, we ought to be fair and say it's been spent.
So we actually could put that in the minutes as well, and then if people want to know.
What was that, sorry?
So the GCP funded the cycle. GCP. And it was 700,000.
Right, district councillors.
So you've had a written report. One of the questions I had from, actually was from Yasmin at Sawston Scene was, have we got any idea of the development on H1B that we've been discussing earlier? Development there. So they are looking to conclude the transaction, the land transfer very shortly. They'll be getting on with the work, and they are going to develop it apparently from the east side in towards Sawston, and going to be doing phased occupancy, and looking at the first occupancy by July next year.
There's certainly a certain amount of activity up there this morning. There was a sort of digging into Bayburn Road, so we're going to resurface on this side.
Okay, right, thank you very much for that. Right, any other questions for Brian? No? Correspondence?
Just thank you from the snooker, Sawston snooker, the donation we made.
That was nice.
Yeah.
Councillors' issues, starting with you, Kieran.
None, thank you.
Tony.
Unfortunately, several here. Mill Lane and the overgrown path, where are we now with the asking the developers to...
Where did we get with that? Did they come out? They
So I spoke to Mr. Farney
Yeah.
last week and complained to him that he hadn't done anything. He complained that the county council had offered to do the work and the cost associated with it if they did it. And as far as I was aware, that we were in a situation where if he refused to do it, we could enforce the county council to do the work for him. But that would only be the street and the pathway. What I'm looking for from Mr. Farney is to restore that to its previous state.
Indeed.
When he took it over, it was very tidy. The bushes were at the same level as the fence. It was open. It was, a visible amenity to the village. So I think that's what we should ask the county council to do.
Yeah, if I don't keep bringing it up, then things aren't moving. So, I first brought it up about 9 months ago.
Well, they are, but it's hard because it's us contacting county contacting them, and then waiting, getting no response. We have written them 3 times.
We have to go for fresh strikes, and then the county gets some strikes. I have contacted the county and asked them to start looking at enforcement on the issue now.
Thank you. Road traffic sign, or our road traffic sign, NPH one on Bayburn Road, hasn't worked for the last 18 months. I just wondered how that is coming along now.
It's moving now, it's been moved.
Yes, it's all right.
Yes,
It's all right. Who's road now?
Yeah. Well, if I don't drive down the road, then I don't see it. But it hadn't moved last time we had a meeting, or last time I was at a meeting.
It's not on the voice, it's answered, is it?
Thank you.
Now you get caught.
Good. The whole of the village, really, every street, avenue, we have trouble with overhanging bushes, trees, and impassable pathways. And I think all councillors should walk around and so that we can pass on to Joe details of impassable pathways, because they are becoming rather bad.
I was going to say, we have written to, when residents have reported it, but if you see it, I need to know which house they're at, so that we might do. But if you can all let us know what you're doing. And you just
Thanks. Otherwise, he doesn't know all his dog, in all honesty.
I don't want you to report potholes now to me.
Freezer burn.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. Mike.
Just a side way.
Alright, we don't want to Neil. Stephen.
Not to reopen S106 because that is just not joy at all. I suppose, should we as a parish council have a sense over a kind of medium-term plan of when developments occur, what our, not to use the phrase wish list, what our kind of longer-term planning is. I'm not in any way suggesting we can sort it by next week or whatever, but I suppose really we ought to have...
We can have those discussions.
Yeah. I just think if we had a kind of, we never know, we don't know what's coming up, do we? We don't know, but if we had a kind of, I don't know, 10-year plan or something, that if suddenly something else appears, we would avoid the situation we've been in.
Yeah.
I mean, it's tough because it's a bit finger in the air, isn't it?
Put it on agenda, like an agenda item.
I think so.
Yeah,
Just,
that's absolutely fine. Shall we put it, so we give people time to think about it?
That's at the beginning of next year.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, it's a January whatever thing, isn't it?
January, February?
It would just, I
Yeah.
don't know, might help us next time.
I'm happy with that.
Okay, thank you.
Alan? Colin?
Tony's already brought up the thing I was going to bring up. I've moved the camera.
I've seen it. I've seen it.
Jane?
At the next meeting, can I just discuss the figures from it? So we make it.
Yeah, we'll make an item.
That's why I can ask. So we've had the camera, the time, good 13, 14 months. We've only seen one set of figures
They will be
in October last year. Can we have them a bit more regularly? Because otherwise it's pointless.
Well, I do once they move, it moves.
Yeah, but we've only had the one set from when it was down the other end in October last year.
Until I move it again, it's
So should we not get any figures from this end at all?
It's not working there.
No, it's
So
we've
they
never seen any figures back from you for that.
Okay, point taken. We'll go to Andrew. John, anything else? No. David? No. Brian? Don't you dare say yes when I said.
No, I'm going to pick up on what Stephen said. So, because there's a new local plan going to be brought forward. And that is absolutely a long term. It will take possibly 4 or 5 years to get through. But we've already started the process with the District Council for that new local plan. And the consultation for that will be coming forward in the end of January. It's a 6-week, very finite consultation period for anybody and everybody to get involved, public, parish councils, individuals. And I think we ought to be talking about that. But I don't think the parish full council meeting is the place to do it. We see this evening what problem we have when we've got something that's a relatively complicated matter with short time to discuss that. So I think we ought to consider having a big and possibly public meeting, and here being the biggest place, or even somewhere else where we can consider what we as a village want our village to look like in 15, 20 years' time, and beyond the scope of perhaps the neighbourhood plan.
And that's exactly what's the neighbourhood plan is. If we want to have those discussions, then we need to go to neighbourhood plan meetings.
Well, we don't go to neighbourhood plan meetings, and they get tied up with all sorts of issues beyond and out with what.
Not now, we've got clarity.
So we've got a set of documentation to support the district's local plan, which can feed in to what we want and what we see as the future for the village.
If we don't.
Yeah, fair point.
We've got to contribute to that.
Yeah. Beck?
All I want to say is we must sort out our emails, because I got told the neighbourhood planning meeting was cancelled, rather than getting the email that it wasn't actually happening.
So I did
have liked to come to
that the neighbourhood plan was cancelled, but we were having a meeting with ACR in its replacement.
Yeah, that was the email that nobody used to make out then, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fine, we can get that sorted out. For me, is just like to say thank you for the helpers on Bonfire Night, and for the hard work that, again, our clerk put into it to make it happen. Unfortunately, due to the weather, we had a bit of a dead squid of a fire. But that was the circumstances. Again, it was great to see that on Remembrance Day it was well supported by the village, and it was a superb turnout. And there has been some comments on Facebook that I haven't been particularly happy with, regarding comments made about the role of councillors and their responsibilities. I think a lot of people do not understand, and I am putting it as there because I know this will go on Facebook. If you have a problem with the parish council, have the gall like Amanda has and come and talk to us. Alright? If you're going to go on Facebook and moan about us, then we're not interested and we don't really care, to be perfectly honest. And the other thing is when it comes to this council, people need to remember there's only one person on this council that has authority, the actual authority and power. We can make decisions, but the clerk, if anything goes wrong, it's the clerk's neck that is on the line, not ours. So people, before they make comment on Facebook, please find out the facts before you make a comment, or come and talk to us. If you haven't, like I said, if you haven't got the courage to come and talk to us, then keep your comments to yourself. Okay? Apart from that, that's all I've got to say.
I just want to say, I've got under correspondence, we just had, thankfully, the footpaths now been completed at St Mary's, and yeah, they're extremely happy with it.
Excellent.
Happy, so that's all done, and yeah, I'd just like to thank those councillors, a few that helped on Bonfire Night, and also for Claire for helping me arrange it.
Excellent. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for everything you did on Saturday, Joe.
You're welcome.
I thought they were on.
Yeah, she did. Joe was up there constantly all day Saturday because of the weather.
And the wind.
Yeah. And I'm sure she buys new Wellington boots every year, I'm convinced. Anyway, moving on to the last item, pursuant of section 1 and 2. You don't want to go through it, but thank you very much, members of the public. This is where we're going to go.